Welcome to the Design Review Committee meeting of December the 19th. I'd like to call the meeting to order. The DRC is a subcommittee of historic zoning. The meeting is informal and designed to guide applicants through the process of obtaining a certificate of appropriateness, or COA, for projects within the city's historic districts in light of the Historic District Design Guidelines. Today's meeting is, well, I'll skip that. So Vernon Girth is here with us today, going to open us up a little bit.
Well, thank you, and as I mentioned previously, happy holidays. The purpose of me being here today, and I don't appear in front of you too often, is to share something what seems to generate a lot of curiosity and excitement for the city. And earlier this month at the joint conceptual workshop that includes members of our Planning Commission and Board of Mayor and Aldermen, Alderman Brown and Alderman Baggett shared an idea for a vision of the area of Franklin Road and Liberty Pike called the Factory District. And you're the first introduction, more formally, that we're going to be talking to the board, to the Planning Commission, to the Historic Zoning Commission to see how we engage you all, as well as stakeholders in our community, in establishing that long-term vision for the area. That includes connectivity to our downtown, creates a streetscape, and really talks about placemaking, making it inviting to the residents and businesses that live and foster that area, but also for visitors, and making it very pedestrian focused is the vision that Aldermans Baggett and Brown shared. In the month ahead or so, staff will be bringing forth to the board during a work session, to talk about this vision, how it involves, and it'll be an inclusive dialogue. It'll take some time, and how we will engage the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, the Planning Commission, and the Historic Zoning Commission, as well as property owners and stakeholders. And it really looking long-term at how redevelopment will occur and the guiding principles and documents that'll be needed to foster this pedestrian-friendly place. So it'll be inclusive of pedestrian walkability, on-street parking, off-street parking, the various types of uses that would be part of this artistic district, and certainly will involve and be required a lot of input, because while our envisioned Franklin land use plan is a document adopted by our Planning Commission, and the board adopts zoning ordinances and rezones property, it's the Historic Zoning Commission that issues a certificate of appropriateness. So to make sure we're as efficient as possible and to provide proper guidance to property owners and the design professionals they hire, it's essential that we get these three bodies aligned for this very unique area of our community and our historic downtown. So I share that with you with a sense of excitement. I know you have some projects that are likely to come forward, but also think about that. We've communicated that the longer-term vision for this area is something that will benefit each of the individual property owners, the businesses that work, and the residents that eventually reside there, but also the community, which we hope spans well beyond our time, and it'll be something that'll be really special. So thank you for allowing me to share that. We're going to share it with the board. The board's already, and the Planning Commission. Those members that attended the joint conceptual workshop have heard this, and we're going to continue as staff to forge ahead. So stay tuned. Thank you, and again, have a wonderful Christmas and New Year's.
Thank you, Vernon. Okay, there are 8 items on afternoon's agenda. When your item is called, please introduce yourself and generally describe your item in about 3 to 5 minutes. Because this month's agenda is lengthy, we ask that you please focus on the specific design points that you want us to talk about and not just your overall concepts. So just the specific points. So we ask you to cooperate us in that fashion. So our first item this afternoon is discussion of alterations, refuse area location and screening at 230 Franklin Road, the factory. Greg Gamble, applicant. And I think we have Brenton Smothers here. Brenton Smothers. All right, Emily, you want to make some opening comments on this?
They'll go first.
All right. Mr. Gamble.
Hi, I'm Greg Gamble, and thank you for this opportunity to come back to you. We requested deferral from the Historic Zoning Commission because we felt like this was a very important item that deserves an additional conversation, but also wanted to better understand from city staff exactly what items in the design guidelines we needed to address. And so we've had that discussion, and I appreciate Amy and Kelly making time for us. I've got a quick handout that I'd like to provide, just a little bit of background information. Amanda, here, this. I guess I should stand up and walk those over to you, couldn't I, Susan? We're excited about the factory district. We're excited about creating a brand in the area at the intersection there that really is expressive of this kind of new chapter in the life of. The factory, as you know, is an adaptive reuse. It doesn't quite fit the bucket of the design guidelines. As you've seen through this process, we've had some challenges, and Holiday is really approaching this as a community input and a conversation. Really excited about new uses, bringing back the water tower, bringing back the brand that we've all known as the factory. If this site were developed as a greenfield site today, we would respond differently to a lot of the considerations here in the design guidelines. Obviously, parking is not permitted in front of a building. We have it in Franklin Road. We have it at the hard corner of Franklin Road at Liberty Pike. We have it along the entire length of Liberty Pike. There are just things that are unique about the factory because it was a factory and this is an adaptive reuse now to more retail, commercial restaurants, entertainment venue. But I wanted to bring you a little bit of history and a little bit of context to this image here shows two dumpster locations on Liberty Pike dating back to 2007. They were removed from this location during COVID. But they have been utilized by restaurants. They've been utilized by the businesses that are here in the factory. To date, we don't have a record of complaints to the factory or to the city regarding smells or noise. Obviously, they were there and emptied at various times throughout the day of the history of the being located there. They are not in any kind of screened enclosure, and we're just located there in the middle of the parking lot. The next page shows you a two-scale comparison of Main Street here, which in my mind does conform to much of the design guidelines regarding parking located behind the buildings. The buildings are brought up to the street. You have parallel parking in front along Main Street. In green, you see the location of either dumpsters or trash cans. This approximate same square footage is in the factory. The factory's entire length is about 950 feet. It has entertainment venues, restaurants, the churches that are on Main Street. There's a lot of compatibility or comparability, I guess I should say, regarding Main Street and the factory. At the factory, we're proposing 4 locations for our refuse containers, a total of 12 individual containers, but in 4 locations. They're distributed around the property for convenience so that trash is not hauled through the middle of the factory when it's necessary to to take it outside. Also, to give you a comparison, if you look on the next page, this is the last two pages then are the dumpster enclosures for
231.
231. This building has a mixture of uses in it. There's a restaurant on the ground floor. What's unique about this one is that it's managed by a property management company. They make sure the doors are closed. They make sure it's clean. They make sure it's managed. Unlike a lot of the other dumpsters and trash receptacles that are down Main Street that are really tenant operated, tenant controlled, and they don't have the same kind of oversight that this particular dumpster does have. It's located directly adjacent to a public sidewalk. It is on the hard corner of 2nd Avenue and Main Street. It would have a lot of those same concerns that we've heard expressed from the board about our dumpster enclosures and their locations here at the factory. Flipping back to the comparison then, the map between Main Street and the factory, one of the items of concern in the historic design guidelines is that modern features do not distract from or overwhelm the context of the historic district. And just want to point out in our illustrative graphics, the dumpster enclosures that we're showing here are 30 feet in length. That represents 0.03%, or I'm sorry, 3% of the length of the factory building itself. Just like on Main Street at 2nd Avenue, you don't notice this. It's back of house, but it's not, but it's also right on 2nd Avenue. It's very visible. You see it, but your mind doesn't really pick it up as being obtrusive or out of context. It's like electric transformers. They're green. They sit on the side of the street. You know that they're there, but they don't become distractions to the architecture. The dominant features of the factory are the parking lot that's along Liberty Pike and along Franklin Road, and then the elevations of the architecture. We're not convinced that they're going to be a distraction or overwhelming along Liberty Pike. We believe that integrated into the landscape plan along Liberty Pike, that contextually they will be compatible. We believe that the location of these two screened enclosures are in a very good location, not just for the tenants, but for the users of the factory, people who are going to be parking, the pedestrians that are going to be accessing the site. We don't have them on major pedestrian routes coming from Harlansdale or coming from Franklin Road or even coming up from downtown Franklin. We are confident that through the management system that Holiday has in place, that these will be kept clean and maintained at a very high level. They have to be for their tenant success. They have to be. They cannot be just dumpsters that are sitting out in the parking lot like they've been since 2007. And again, this is a new day and a new step forward, and we want to make sure that we're really handling this at a very high level and a very high bar. I believe that prior to the last Historic Zoning Commission, though, that there might have been some additional feedback that we needed to hear from the Historic Zoning Commission, and so we wanted to turn it over to y'all just for additional comments.
Okay, thank you. Emily, you have any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant's request to place refuse areas fronting Liberty Pike falls under the two chapters of the guidelines. The first chapter is Chapter 7, Fences, Walls, and Gates, and it states that fences and walls should measure no more than 3 feet in front yards, as principal buildings and front yards are more visible from public view sheds. The second chapter is Chapter 9, Modern Features, which states that generally modern features should be placed so that they are screened from public view, do not involve the removal of historic features, and do not detract from or overwhelm the context of historic districts. The proposed locations for the refuse locations are located in the parking lot adjacent to the public sidewalk at Liberty Pike, and they are highly visible. These refuse area locations are not consistent with the context of the street or the historic district in general, and may detract from the historic buildings at the factory campus. Thank you.
Okay, comments, who wants to be first rather than me call on somebody? Kathy, go ahead.
When we look at this site, and I know it is a site where there really is no back of the house, so to speak, by the time the completion of the site is. So I think you've done a handsome job of locating these and masking them and greenscaping them out and maintaining a design on them that's pretty. I think the profile will be small in comparison when you look at what's going on with the factory as proposed. And so while, Chapter 9 does not make this okay, I would support it because this is a unique site and we really have no back of the house, so to speak, to put this needed item. It's a site that's becoming inside, the outside is now the usable space, so it's creating that sense of community, and so it makes sense to place them where you've placed them.
A lot of past history with the factory, the Mojo Taco area and the Mockingbird Theater has kind of been thought of as back of house, but the Holidays approach of redesigning that, introducing the carousel building, it really won't be back of house anymore. This is going to be a four-sided experience all the way around the factory. So to your point, you'll start to see some changes that really add to that experience of really opening up the entire area of the factory in a different way.
I agree.
Mr. Chair, would you like this to just be commissioner comment only, given the brevity of the meeting?
Yeah, please.
Thanks.
We'll ask if we need to. Mary,
Sorry,
you got a
thank you.
comment?
Yeah. Let me get that. Number one, I don't believe that the building on Second is a comparable situation. That's a secondary sidewalk, and it is pulled off the main sidewalk of the street. And my concern continues to be putting dumpsters next to the pedestrian sidewalk and street is, I agree with the design guidelines. It's just out of context, and would like more of an approach like I think is on this building downtown, which pulls it in a more secondary location from the sidewalk. So I'm still concerned about going here, and we always need to look at who's the next person that's going to be needed for. I do think this is a unique situation. I would agree that, it's our factory. We don't have another factory. But with all the locations, there might be, to pull it off more, I would be a fan of it being in more of a secondary location. And this is one dumpster, I think, on the downtown building. This is 30 feet. I can't look at this room and decide the comparison, but 30 feet's quite a distance. So that's my concern and why I'm going to have trouble supporting it.
Okay, Susan?
I would have to support Ms. Pierce's comments.
All right, Josh? Okay, Brian?
So I appreciate you bringing this to us and just having more of a discussion about it. So when I look at Franklin Road, we know that's a main thoroughfare. But the shortest portion of what we see of the factory is located on Franklin Road. The majority, as you brought in your diagram, is located on Liberty Pike. And what we're seeing is it's become a very engaged street from Mac Hatcher all the way to Franklin Road. So that view shed is becoming even more important, especially with the changes now that are happening at the factory. And with the changes at the factory, now we're seeing the property directly across the street from where the dumpsters would be located being developed into a multifamily situation. And then we're talking about boulevards with the new Franklin district. This is becoming a very important view shed for the factory. So when I look at the guidelines and I consider that, it makes it difficult for me to support this, although understanding the need for dumpsters. And I just have, that's what these are. These are enclosures for dumpsters. And when I look at the Second Avenue site, I see that is next to a brand-new building, which is the parking garage. And it's a much smaller footprint than 30 feet by 12 feet by 8 feet. It's what we're looking for looking at the factory. And the view shed that it adjacent to is are historic buildings. So if I look at the actual guidelines, I have to support the guidelines in this. And I would just encourage that, I know so how many, this is a question that I have, Mr. Chair, is how many acres make up the factory complex?
20,
There are 20 acres.
which is about the size of, it's about the size of downtown from First to Fifth and go a block back. So that's the comparison that Greg just showed.
I would encourage within that 20 acres somewhere, finding a great spot to put the additional dumpsters that are necessary in a creative way to get the trash from the various businesses to that location. And I think that would be the best solution.
What?
I'm Tyler's.
Go ahead.
So Commissioner LaMarinelle couldn't be here this evening, and forgive my voice, but I wanted to share his comments. He did note that although the guidelines do not recommend structures of this kind to be placed in front of historic buildings, he sees no issue with this item and thinks it is a necessary part of this project. He feels that this uniqueness of this project requires some latitude with the interpretation of the guidelines. Thanks.
Okay, I support this 100%, and as I have all the way through, because I think it makes, there is no back to this whole property. You are redeveloping this entire southern side of the building so that restaurants and businesses can come out that entrance, more so than it's ever been done before. And I think the locations here make perfect sense. When one travels on Liberty Pike, they're going to see about four to no more than 5 feet of brick above the way this thing grades down. And I think the way you've got it designed and the practicality of your tenants being able to bring the trash out that side door rather than taking it all the way back to the back of the building makes perfect sense. And this is well thought out and well designed, and I just don't, I don't think the stated guidelines in modern features really fits this application. So I can support what you're presenting. Any other comments? Okay.
They want to know if they can speak.
Yeah.
The 20 acres comparison, I mean, that's kind of, taken in kind of a totality. I mean, really what you need to break down is the path of travel from restaurants, from businesses. And it's always going to be the easiest way to get from point A to point B is the way that trash is going to be taken. And what we're trying to avoid is we're trying to control it as best we can. And by controlling and by doing that is putting in locations that are we feel we can tuck away, get away from the active areas, i.e. the outdoor patio areas, the areas we really don't want it, and tuck it away in areas where we can kind of hide it, with landscaping, with parking, but still have it proximate to the kitchens and the restaurants. Because really what it's going to come down to is somebody that's working in the back of the kitchen that's just taking the trash bag out and, not really caring too much about what happens. And a great example is we've been doing this mobile bar in our Grand Hall, right next to this beautiful Christmas tree, and we're having, this nice moment where people are enjoying, one of the first nights of this, and someone's taking the trash out of a restaurant, going right past us, and this is in kind of an early phase too, while we're building out, and we've got growing pains and whatnot. But when we finish what we're doing in that Grand Hall, it's going to be really nice, and that disrupts it. And that's kind of if you were to put everything in the back, that's what's going to happen. And you can kind of fight it a little bit and have rules and regulations, but you're going to be chasing your tail. And so what we've tried to, and we've come to you a number of times, and we've been thinking through this for a long time. And so this is not, the first round of this. A lot of thought's been going into this, and a lot of conversations with prospective restaurants has also been part of this too. So anyway, it's not the area, it's the path of travel. And if you look at that drawing, that aerial that Greg shows, you have all those dots, and they're very proximate to where the end user is. So.
I don't know how much flexibility that we have to make changes. We've got a modification of standards approved by BOMA that allows for the dumpster containers to be located in enclosures in between the building and Liberty Pike. From the beginning, we've really tried to build consensus as best we possibly can. Is the location of the dumpsters between the buildings and Liberty Pike an issue, or is it simply the proximity to the sidewalks?
I would say for me, it's the proximity to the sidewalk.
Okay.
I would say that's my concern.
Okay, so if we were to find a way, and I don't know that we can, because we have to make sure that we have fire truck circulation through our parking lot, we have to make sure that we have stormwater drainage and all the engineering pieces work. But if we were to find a place between the building and Liberty Pike within that parking lot area somewhere, that might be heading into a direction that you would find more appealing.
No,
For me,
not for me.
Okay,
I would say yes.
okay. And this isn't a debate.
No.
I'm just
Yeah.
putting it out
But you
there.
need some input. So
Yeah, you need
This is the
input.
fourth or fifth time that we've heard about
Right.
this refuge
Absolutely.
locations. And I think we need to settle on it one way or the other. And you gotta be able to perform, and place these things. And I just think we need to settle it somehow. So if you can find another spot that would be, I'm fine where it is, I've said that. But if you find another spot that might work, then let's hear it, but,
May I interject,
yeah.
Mr. Chair? I don't know if we've mentioned this, but was it ever a thought that where their location is, and to get rid of the view of them from Liberty Pike, was if they back into like a mound of earth? So what you see from Liberty Pike is just a mound of earth. Oops. You still enter them like you enter.
We mentioned
With
that
the
early on at one of
infrastructure.
the very early Historic Zoning Commission meetings, and it sounded like a resounding, do not grade this in a different way. So we've stayed away from doing any kind of landscape berming or tucking them into the side of the hill or
Kelly?
anything like that.
The zoning ordinance would also address not having berming in between the building and the street.
Thank you for clearing that.
All right, anything else?
I would just like to say, for me, I'd be interested to see if you think about it differently and want to present that. I'd be very open to that. But for me, it is the view shed. And having that Liberty Pike is becoming a very important street. And so that is my main consideration.
Okay.
And I appreciate your time.
I know, but we got to deal with where Liberty Pike is right now.
But what I would say, well, we've got to deal with what the vision coming forward is, I think. And there seems to be enthusiasm for having the factory district, having more housing around there. I think it's going to become, what's the word I'm trying to say, a more integral part. It's kind of been our backdoor new street that was cut. I don't see that going forward. I don't see it really what you all would want. So I would like to see it treated like a main artery, and I just don't see the dumpsters right up against the sidewalk, especially the length of them. I'm keep trying to visual, and you can probably.
3 cars. Like
You can
3 parking
probably tell
spaces.
me, Greg, how wide is this room? I don't know how to figure it. I guess I could count the squares, but it's 30 feet's pretty big.
It would be 3
so-
cars parked next to each other. That'd be about, it's 27, but that's 30
Mm-hmm.
feet. So you can kind of think of 3 parking spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
One comment on the context, if you go a couple more pages, that kind of shows the overall context, and I mean, we only have 2, a couple more sheets, please. You really have to look at it in the whole elevation. Liberty Pike is extremely long, there it is. Extremely long elevation, that's not even the whole elevation in that image, because it doesn't show up on the same page. So in context, it really is buried, and what we've tried to do is dress it up in lieu of the mound. It's concealed with ornamental trees, bushes, green screen on the wall too, and in fact, it kind of blends out. It's like a larger shrub kind of area. But
Okay, I think we need to move on. Yeah, I think you got a sense.
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, we're ready for item 2, new construction, the accessory pavilion at 418 Lewisburg. Brian Walker.
All right, everyone, just as a reminder, this item came before the DRC previously. It's to discuss the location of a proposed pavilion at Collins Farm, which you can see on the screen here. It's a public park at 418 Lewisburg Avenue. We have Brian from the Parks Department here to share an update on the proposal in light of the previous comments, and I will provide some comments afterward. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Brian Walker with the Parks Department. As we stated before, we've been working with the Daughters of the American Revolution making some enhancements at Collins Farm. And one of the enhancements that we were looking at is a proposed pavilion. After getting some feedback from you all at the last meeting, the overall size of the pavilion is 16 by 16 by 12. Well, technically, it's 11 feet, 10 inches, and 3/4 inches tall. We have looked at using a rough sawn western red cedar, and that cedar won't be stained. It'll be allowed to fade to its natural color. Part of the issues in the past had to do with some of the fasteners. Those fasteners were a bit decorative. Those fasteners are not being used any longer. They're going with a more simple connector. And that's really where we're at. We've taken some of your feedback and made some adjustments. Any comments?
Okay, any comments from anyone?
I just wanted to note that as far as the design guidelines go, the accessory structure section would recommend that one-use materials and exterior finishes typical and historic equivalents. So the Parks Department has worked with the DAR to re-envision this as a cedar building, which would be appropriate, and that if there's a lack of historically appropriate detailing, that those be placed where they're not visible from the facade. So in this case, it cannot be placed where it's not visible from the facade. So detailing was crucial, and the DRC recommended that detailing be adjusted to be more historically appropriate. So the applicant did work on the fasteners and talked to staff extensively about the bracing and things that you see on the screen to try to make that more in keeping with the context of Collins Farm. Thank you.
Comments, anyone? Kathy?
So the changes that they made with the red cedar and then the detailing, was that okay with staff?
So staff can't give a formal recommendation because it is a city item, but it does appear to be more in keeping with the recommendations of the guidelines, yes.
And I have a question, is it still a kit?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
It's still a kit, but it allows you to do customized detailing.
Correct.
Okay. And beam size and
Yes,
those type of elements that give it more of a historical look.
yes, the posts are 6 by 6, the headers 4 by 8, so they are some larger beams,
Okay.
materials.
Thank you.
Mary?
I guess that I'm just going to concede to be okay with this. I just think it's a huge missed opportunity. This is a very rusticated-looking house and site, and I think that there could be something extraordinary looking there. I keep thinking about the outdoor theater in Leaper's Fork and the pavilion there. So I guess I just see this as it's not going to, I guess, do so much harm as it is a missed opportunity. Thank you.
Brian?
I'll say this, it's more in keeping with the guidelines than what we saw last time. And I would say that I would echo Ms. Pierce's comments. I would say, you know, if this came before us at the voting meeting, that I would probably support it.
Josh?
Yeah, my question was, I think at the last DRC, there was discussion about maybe doing some research and giving us some examples of some pavilions that were in other historic contexts. I don't know if that was done or if it was just, it looks like the kit was just kind of adjusted to be less kit-like, and I would really love to see some other examples in similar contexts to feel more comfortable with it. That's my take.
Susan?
I would echo these comments. Thank you.
I don't have anything. Okay, I think we're done.
If I may, the Parks Department would like a little bit more understanding of whether or not this would be supported or if it's something that should be continued to be worked on. So
I think Kathy said she'd support it. Mary said,
I think I would. Oh, excuse me. I think I would support it. I think that V in the front,
I did
that-
ask about that. I did
that
ask
needs
about
work.
that.
I think if that were filled in with a handmade, traditional-looking lattice or something, that could go a long way. It just looks like a kit in a place that there's a big opportunity to do something. That's more what it is.
so it's a maybe, you're a maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, Brian, are you said you were supportive of it.
I said I would. I think there are better options, but you know, money's an issue here too.
Yeah, I know it is, yes,
Yep.
very much so.
I'd like to see some, I think that was the ask at the last meeting is, can you give us some, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think it was, can you give us some other examples of similar pavilions in similar settings, just so we can have that context? So I'd love to see that.
Susan?
I would not support it as it is now.
Okay.
There is a photograph of John Henderson, whose father owned this property, and it shows an outbuilding with lattice on it that would be very appropriate for this spot. That's what I prefer to see. And it's just, you know, like I said, it's the cost consideration for a nonprofit, and that I'm also considering too.
Mr. Chair, I would also say, I think that there would be some people, I'm just guessing, that would support this a lot with the nonprofit, and the money decision might not have to carry the day. Thank you. And we have a talented Parks Department.
Okay, all right, thank you, Brian.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, we're ready for the next one, new construction, accessory and alterations, gate installation at 202 Second Avenue South. Brian Pretty, welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
This is a proposal for a small building, would serve as a small studio space behind the gallery. As you can see on the, we've got some context images and then the site plan. So to the right, you've got the existing Gallery 202 we're all familiar with. And then across the gravel drive is where we've got the small proposed studio building. Again, as we looked at the design for that, wanted to respect the existing building, both in height, massing, tried to create something that's simple, proportionally respects what's there, is nice, but certainly not anything that's going to overpower that existing historic structure. In addition, we're proposing a small fence and a gate with some stone columns to provide a little bit of access control along that existing, in front of that existing gravel. As we laid things out, if you go to the next sheet with the elevations, we're showing what we're proposing up against the existing historic structure. Wanted to stay below those primary roof lines. Our eave line is below the building's primary eave line. Again, just trying to keep with the guidelines and what is described for accessory structures. This elevation we're looking at on this first page, as you can see here, is what you would see along Church Street. Try to do a little bit of articulation. We're not able to bring in large windows because just functionally as a studio space wants to be able to manage the light in there, but we're showing some shutters and awning, just again, some simple detailing to articulate that face, again, without overshadowing what's there. So I hope that's a good, I'll kind of keep it short, good, quick description of what we're proposing. I guess I would turn it over to questions, anything I can help with. I know in particular to the point of what we'd like, I guess I want to confirm height massing is consistent with what you would expect, in particular on that elevation facing Church Street, and then also the little entry gate feature, fence and gate feature. Just get feedback on those, and obviously anything else you see is notable or that you'd like to ask questions or comment on.
Okay, Emily, are you?
I just wanted to note really quick before I turn it over to Emily that this item did come before the DRC a couple of times previously. And I believe that, Brandon and the owner, Mr. Harwood, who's in the back here, have responded really well to those comments. So Emily's going to remind you of what the guidelines state in relation to this.
Thanks, Amanda. The applicant's request to construct a fence with a gate and accessory structure behind the principal building. These alterations fall under the Chapter 7 fences and walls and gates and Chapter 5 accessory structures. The guidelines state that fences in the rear yard are to be at least 20 feet behind the front facade and use materials that are appropriate based on the site and setting. Additionally, gates are to be of a different material and design from the surrounding fence and not to exceed 7 feet in height, and the applicant's proposed fence and gate follows these guidelines. The application meets the intent of the guidelines for new accessory structures, and there is one note that we wanted to point out is the applicant is proposing to use stained glass windows on the south elevation of the building. While the use of stained glass is not typical to the guidelines, the use of the stained glass will not be visible from the right-of-way and face inside the property. Thank you.
Okay. Susan, you want to comment? I'll let you be first.
Well, I think the first thing is that we have a federal house with a Gothic revival accessory building, and they're not really, it's a beautiful design, but I don't, when you start to bring in a stained glass window with this, with an arch, then that is a Gothic, experience. You may not consider it that way, but I do. So I'm concerned about that. I think the scale and the massing are much better than what we had seen previously. But I'm just concerned about having something that speaks to the Gothic, even though it's not visible, when we have really arguably the best federal house in downtown Franklin. Thank you.
Josh?
Yeah, I think, thanks for listening on the scale and the massing. I think that that's a massive improvement. I guess I would, the parts that I have more concern about are really facing that inside courtyard, and they're not facing the right of way. So that gives me a little more comfort. But, you know, that wooden glass door system just reads very modern to me.
This is the elevation 1 on the 4th page.
Yep.
About this piece, in between the two stained glass.
Right, yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Understood.
yeah. But again, that's
Yeah.
facing the courtyard, so.
Yeah, no, understood. And the intent of that was to open things up to that existing fountain, little courtyard. Stylistically, strictly for the building, it's a little, definitely a little bit outside that, but from a functional standpoint, you know, we thought with the limited visibility, that would be a place where we could maybe do something a little
Yeah.
different was the idea, but understood.
I completely understand
Yep.
why you did what you did, and I think it does help that it's facing the internal courtyard.
Yep.
Brian?
Height and scale, I think, is much better. I think it works better with the historic property. So I think that's a very positive thing that we're seeing. One thing I think that really does need work, though, are the window openings. I know these are faux. They're faux shutters that we're seeing. But if you look at the actual window dimensions and proportions on the Federal House, even on the side that you're seeing on Church Street, and you look at the windows that we're seeing on the accessory building, they're so much larger than what you would actually see on an accessory building. And I think somehow that needs some work to try to bring that into more proportional harmony,
Okay.
not only to the accessory structure, but to the Federal House. And those would be my main comments.
Kathy?
When I look at the elevation on Church Street, I agree with Brian in mimicking more of the window proportion of the federal building. But I do understand the combination and how, when you look at the other elevations, it feels very Gothic, church-like, very different style, like it just kind of fell in on the site. However, we really don't view it direct on that much because of the Church Street side. So when I look at the Church Street elevation, it has a very amicable feel and style to the federal building, just that one elevation. And I think with proportioning the windows and then the little shed overhang, that takes it maybe to a cottage level. So I'm getting a real mix of styles here, and I would like it not to be so competitive with the federal building, if that sort of makes sense.
Do you think it's the vertical proportion of what's proposed there at the
I think
the
it's
shutters
just the
at faux windows?
proportion of it. I mean, the overall height, I think you've done an excellent job from what we had seen before in making it look more like a studio or another accessory building that might have always been there. And it is beautifully placed on the site with the little courtyard and all of that. But what gets the most view, I think, needs to be more complementary to the federal building, because it is a magnificent building.
Absolutely, 100%. So it sounds like maybe we need to look at
Fenestration,
those, yeah.
stylizing it
just something a little
proportions.
smaller.
to the window of the federal.
Okay.
Mary?
I think the scale, proportion, the overall building hits the mark. And I would agree with the comments on the windows. And we don't see the side on the garden, but just for my money, if that were just all the glass that you all envision on the big door, I think it wouldn't feel as competitive with the house.
Okay.
So, but scale, size, where it's sitting, all that, yes.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
My comments, currently, the current accessory building lines up with the Church Street side of the main building. This is pushed out further. Is it in front of where the current row of hedges is? Is that? I looked at it yesterday, just
Talking about the
the
hedges that are.
elevation of the studio that's closest to church, where the shutters are, the faux
Yep.
windows are, that's pushed out further than it is currently. If I'm.
Yes, yeah, like where the hedges against that
Yeah, so
existing
it's-
building,
Is
yes,
this on
sir.
the outside of the hedges?
Yes, sir.
Would be where the outside of the hedges is now?
Yes, sir, yes.
Okay, all right. So you've moved it out roughly 8 feet, 8 or 10 feet?
I'm trying to remember what that dimension is now off the sidewalk, because so right now, we're,
I just think we need to see that and maybe see something when you come back for a vote,
yeah.
how that
Okay.
relates to the main house.
So kind of on this site plan to maybe ghost in that existing
Yeah,
building and bushes, you
somehow.
can see. Okay.
I just don't, I don't want it to be the dominant feature
Yeah.
as you go down Church Street, so.
Understood.
That's one thing. The other thing is the big wooden doors. I'm looking at the picture, precedent for the big wood doors, and then I'm looking at your drawing. I think your wooden doors are smaller, shorter than what I'm seeing in this picture. But it seems to overpower the front if I'm looking at the drawing. So I don't know what the dimensions on your doors are, the wood doors.
So the wood doors are, I believe it's 12 feet tall. I think that's
Okay.
right.
I would say these ones in the picture are probably, I'm guessing about 14.
Yeah. And that picture is,
It's the concept.
Yeah, that's right.
I understand that. But that's just what struck me when I saw your drawing. But otherwise, as everybody else has said, the scale of all of this is fine. I don't have any problem with the elevation that faces the garden. I think that's
okay.
that's quite an enhanced elevation. But, so those are my only comments.
So then just so I'm clear on the doors, the large wood doors we're talking about, proportionally too large or?
To me, just my initial impression is it seems a little large.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you said 12 feet tall, I don't know the width on them. Maybe they're 6 feet, maybe it's
Yeah, I
probably
think
6 or 7 feet wide,
I think the
would guess.
width ends up being over, I think each one of those is 5.
So it's 10 feet wide,
12? Oh, okay, 12. So each one's 6.
pretty wide.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know, some other folks here
Yeah,
could
I-
possibly comment on that. but-
I think what you're getting at, Jim,
That's right.
is these look more vertical, these are wider.
Yeah, that's
And
12
so-
feet, yeah.
Yeah, so if,
12 by 12. It's
if
Yes,
they were
that's right.
maybe a little narrower, they'd read more like your inspiration picture.
There may be good
Understood.
reason to, beside design, to have them that wide. It may be a function to get things in and out. I don't know. You may want to look at just a smaller
Understood.
door.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add one comment. I know that was a good point about how this new structure is going to be set out further than the current, and it might be helpful for the commission if we had just a stake with where the corners would be proposed to be on Church, just because I know we've had some other instances where you go back and look and you didn't realize the building was going to be quite so close to the road.
That's a good point. I think so if you'll look in where the photographs are, the bottom right corner, I think it's actually lined up with the front edge of those hedges.
Yeah.
That's what I'm guessing.
Would it help
But
to
that's good.
have, would it help to have first a picture that's a little wider so you can see the bushes and the sidewalk and then be able
Yeah,
to,
I
on the
think
site
so.
plan,
I mean,
goes
the
to.
Stakes might be fine.
I
but
think,
Okay.
because it's,
Whatever
Well-
you can provide would be
yeah, it looks
great.
like it's 5.5 feet off of the line based on the drawing. And
That's
I think
right.
if you
Yeah.
just stick a stake in the corners,
And then have
for
a
me, you don't have to do anything fancy.
Gotcha.
I just think it would help me to visualize,
Okay.
oh, wow, that's that much closer to the sidewalk.
Okay.
Because
Well-
we have had other ones where you're like, oh, I didn't really appreciate it was going to be that close to the road.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think if you also show the building that's on Third, at the corner of Third and Church, that will kind of let you see it in the context of the street,
Okay,
because that does come up closer. So,
okay.
So like a like a
yeah,
rough
the king-
street
The
scheme
King property.
that
Right there.
shows just a box to show.
because that's going to show how the street reads, and I
Okay.
think that's what we're
Yeah.
Okay.
going to be
So
looking at
basically how this would-
forever.
How this would sit in
Both-
relation to.
We'll do it both
Yeah.
ways. You
Yeah.
show it from Second,
Yep.
looking
You do.
toward Third, and then Third looking toward Second.
Yeah.
That would be good.
Because when you look at it in isolation, it can look fine. And then when you get the full
Then
context,
there's
it can be a little
surprise
jolting.
after it's done.
Yeah.
And we have, you're right, we've
I
seen instances
I don't
of
suspect
that.
that's going to be the case here. I just think that's
I don't
helpful
either.
for
I
me
think
to
that-
make sure,
I
because
think
that
that
is
makes
a,
perfect
It's a
sense.
dominant spot.
yeah.
I don't like surprises. I don't want you guys, I know you guys don't like surprises.
I have a question. So there were questions about the entry door. So what you're used to seeing is a square garage door. So would it help you if you saw like a dotted line, like kind of ghosted in to show what a garage door dimension would look like in comparison to what you're seeing for the arched opening?
Whatever, I mean, I guess I'm the only one that's had a
I think
comment
for
on the doors.
me, the
Pardon?
ghosting of a garage door would be more confusing because
Okay.
I want to see your design.
Okay.
And when I look at the hip and the amount of space between the top of the arch door and the peak of the hip, and then I look at your drawing, and then I look at the image that you've proposed, that's much shorter of a distance between the
That's
peak
true.
and the top of the door. So the arch is a little wonky. It's looking wider than taller. So keep your width, but then your arch may have to go up higher.
Let me,
Make it look more like the photograph.
okay. I guess I though want to be sure because if, again, in thinking proportionally how we're handling these pieces on the elevation, it felt like if I understood correctly, what we had done with some of those windows along Church had gotten a little too tall. I don't want to accentuate the verticality here and throw that off. Is there any concern if those doors, proportionally right now, they are at 12 by 12, you know, the
Does it
intent was to
align with
read-
any of those? No.
Does it
I mean, when
align?
when I look at your view 3, that corner angle, it looks like it's taller than anything, the arch
It is.
doors.
They are, that's right.
So I don't want to tell you how to
Yeah.
design actually,
No,
but
that's-
just looking at everyone's having some trouble with the proportion of that door.
Okay.
So design for your width, because
Yep.
it needs to serve
Yeah,
its
it's got to
purpose.
be wide enough to,
Right.
okay.
And these doors
So we
are not
just-
operable, are they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They
The front
operable
one
doors?
is.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
they can be opened up.
So
So
I
we can
think-
certainly, I think we can certainly pop those up.
It's going to be the easiest way to
Yep.
get things in and out, and some of the
Absolutely.
pieces of art are large.
Well, you gave us the picture. I think if you wouldn't have given us the picture, we wouldn't have had the comparison.
What's that? I'm sorry.
You gave us a
TMI.
pretty picture. If you wouldn't have given us that, we have a comparison to it. So I
that's-
think we're
All right,
liking the
just
picture.
play,
okay.
I think
Okay.
just play with that a little bit.
Okay.
I want to go back to the north elevation again, the view from Church Street. And what you've been discussing is the view from Second, which is very important.
Well, I mean, both, but I think view from Third going up and view from Second going up, so we see how.
going to matter.
Yeah, they are
Yeah,
very
yeah.
important, what you're talking about on these arched doors, and the height of those and the scale. But, so what was the idea on, where we've got the, it's like the overhang with the metal roof on it, and then we have the faux, bifold shutters. What was the idea on that? 'Cause it doesn't look like a typical window.
No, I think the idea was if you had there was a time when we were looking at a larger window there and then kind of went away, but it was really trying to do something to articulate that face and give it some sort of element on that elevation to provide some visual interest. And I guess as we looked at it proportionally to kind of fill that vertical height, that's where the height came from. I think we probably got away a little bit from that existing architecture and obviously in the main building. But I guess that's kind of what we were going for, was something to provide some interest along that streetscape, so it wasn't hey, here's some siding and here's a couple little pop windows or a couple little shutters.
I
Something
think
to provide some interest.
well-scaled windows will do it. I don't think you need the shed.
Okay.
I don't think lighting in that configuration is typical on the side of a building.
So they actually don't want windows on the
Right.
side. And so when they kind of tried to figure out how to do shutters where it would feel like they were actually
And I think-
operable, they were having some trouble with
Yeah.
making that work.
But I think they're on the right, you're going down the right thought process
Right.
in my mind of breaking that up. So
Okay.
I totally support breaking it up. I just think you don't need the shed over the windows, you don't need the lights, but properties get properly scaled, I can't get that out.
Yep.
Windows.
Gotcha. So
Or
idea, that's
fake
good. We
windows.
just really need to tone it back a little bit.
Well, just a suggestion, since you do have road frontage, you're on a corner. And if you had, let's say, a car back in the, or a carriage, and you wanted to be able to come in one side and come out the other, I mean, on this Church Street side, rather than, you could keep an opening that large, but have it look more like garage, like operable doors, swing doors, that you would have on a carriage house. They go all the way down to the ground, and that would give you, at least on that side, it kind of looks like that's an entrance to your garage where you could come out the arch ones or vice
Okay.
versa, and help give you what you're after.
Okay. So really kind of fill that in with another, obviously they wouldn't be operable, it would be a set of faux doors, but something that's really mimicking what's on that face,
Well,
the arch doors we've got on the face.
Well, you could leave the arch doors on the Second Avenue
Yeah.
side, and on this side, actually have, rectangular doors.
Okay.
And have them, look like they were a
Like carriage house doors.
A carriage house door.
That's great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
perfect.
And then
I
you
like
won't
that.
have to worry about that fighting with the window size.
No, I think that's great.
All right, anything else we need to
And if
move
it's
on?
rectangular, then you're not competing with the main entrance and having to do similar door pattern. It could be something different and more subdued.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, next item, discussion of wall and signage at 1001 Benelli Park. Jim Poole, applicant.
So we have with us Jim Poole, and we have Connor Ball with us, Hebert and Ball, and they're here to answer any of your questions. I'll let them speak, and then Emily's going to provide some comments.
All right. Gentlemen, welcome.
Say that we were here last time.
Right.
And had got some comments. And then Emily was kind enough to come have a site meeting with us. Sorry, Emily, Amanda. Was kind enough. And so Connor has revised the drawing, and I thought I would let him kind of walk you through what we did.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. We're able to revise the drawing with Amanda's feedback and y'all's feedback as well. The wall is, we're trying to build a wall that is to, I guess, unify that street frontage that we're along. There's a lot of different retaining walls or walls along Boyd Mill. We want to unify with the neighbors with our wall. We're going to preserve the existing pine trees that are at the corner of Benelli Park and Boyd Mill. We're going to try to shift the walls close to Benelli Park Drive as we can, still preserving those walls. We met with Jason, the landscape architect for the city as well, discussed how best to do that. And then we were able to scale down the signage to meet the signage requirements, and added a little bit more landscape to create more of a park-like feel that the space is for the development.
Okay. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant's request to construct a development entrance sign correlates to Chapter 8 signs. Signs for residential infill neighborhoods should only be considered as part of a residential neighborhood that will be developed on a new street within the district. This wall was designed as a retaining wall, and the selection of the sign should be based on the surrounding historic context, which the applicant plans on matching the stone walls that are seen on Boyd Mill Avenue. The sign area on a development entrance sign can measure a maximum of 5 square feet. The applicant plans to have the word Benelli in 7-inch black aluminum letters affixed to the sign with pins. And we do need, staff needs dimensions to confirm what the square footage of that would be. The height of the development sign can have a maximum height of 5 feet with a column cap maximum of 7 feet. And the applicant's sign wall will be 3 foot 4 inches in height, and that meets the guidelines. The illumination of the development sign entrance can utilize warm colored uplighting, and the applicant is proposing two different types of warm colored uplighting that will be used for the sign and for the oak tree, and it meets the guidelines. The placement of the sign can be at a minimum setback of the property line, which the applicant proposes that the sign will set back 5 feet from the right-of-way, and it also meets the guidelines.
So I just wanted to add that there has been a little bit of confusion. This is intended to serve not only as a sign for the development, but also as a retaining wall at that location. So Emily's going to pull up the photos that the applicant provided. Are those the new photos? Okay, so you can see on the screen where the spray paint is the actual dimensions of that proposed sign. And Connor can speak more specifically if you have questions about how that retaining function will go. And there's also some elevations there at staff's request that show the relationship at a pedestrian scale of how tall it will feel when it's built and retaining in relation to a human walking down the sidewalk. And forgive my voice. Hey, Connor, do you want to speak to that retaining wall aspect, please? Emily can pull up whatever plan you want to see.
So, I don't know if anybody had a chance to drop by and see that. I know one of Amanda's first concerns was why are we retaining? As you can see from the picture she showed, there is about a 3-to-1 slope. It's the runoff. It's not the best looking area. It's hard to maintain. So we thought about putting that wall in to unify us with our neighbors and also to use that as the sign. The detail on there shows the retaining wall. It's 3.5 feet wide, waist high. And the end of it will taper off into grade. So it'll be a nice rounded edge on the end that just kind of flows into the existing grade. Is there anything else?
Okay. Susan?
I don't have any comments.
Josh?
No comments.
Brian?
I think it's a creative solution.
Mary?
Good.
Kathy?
I think it is a good solution. I appreciate the dog and the scaled image and the 811 dig.
The only question on the lighting, are you proposing to light only the signage part or the whole wall or what?
It'll just be the signage part. It'll be
Okay.
uplit, and then we are proposing the large oak tree. They would like to put some uplightings for that tree. It is a magnificent tree. If you have a chance to drop by and see it, you'll see why we want to put some light on that tree.
The only comment that I got from my colleague Tyler that left was he said, I just hope the lighting is not nuclear. So- Yeah. Okay. Other than that, I think we're good. Thank you. All right, next item, discussion of alterations to previously approved new construction porch columns at 724 Fair Street. I think I see Mr. Coffey sitting in the back.
Okay,
And
Mr. Coffey's here, the architect for, representative for the owner. So as he comes up, I just wanted to note, this is a little bit of a unique request today. This project has been approved for some substantial changes, to the porch at the property. The owner contacted staff and asked that the porch columns, which are being rebuilt, and approved as wood, be changed to a composite material. And staff did not find that an appropriate administrative level decision. The applicant also expressed some concern about timing when staff informed them that it needed to go back to the Historic Zoning Commission. So they asked if it could come to DRC for a discussion and see if the DRC would be amenable to allowing the staff to work with the applicant to move forward with a composite material in lieu of the wood. So I had advised them to provide a lot of information about the composite material and how it would look and weather in relation to wood, which is the approved material. So they have provided some information, and Mr. Coffey can speak to that request. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Coffey, welcome. Yeah.
All right, there we go. Yeah, Kevin Coffey, for those of you that don't know. So we are proposing a composite column, and I've used these columns, in fact, this exact brand, dozens of times. And I think one of the distinctions here is if we were restoring the front porch and there were pieces of columns that were still remaining that were wood, I would do the other columns in wood to match those every time. But we're in a situation where that is not the case. If you remember, we kind of raised the level of the front porch roof a little bit to allow for shutters and made a couple more modifications on the roof. And so these are new columns, and these columns outperform the wood dramatically. Not only in initial cost, which isn't really the overriding factor for me, but in lifespan costs, since they don't rot. How many old houses have you driven by, and the main spot where you see rot happening is on the front columns that are wood? And so that's really, one of the main factors here. I mean, besides cost, is just longevity and maintenance. The fact of the matter is that these columns, when you go up, they have a very good touch to them. They don't like echo. They are composite, they're thick, they're solid. They feel, if you go tap on them, they feel real because they are real columns. And I just think they're a really logical choice that, will last for a long time. And timing-wise, I totally get what the Rietvelds are going through on this. So the packet shows, a couple of applications of these columns and a couple of the pictures. And, this is not just a thing where, obviously, looking at them from a distance, you would never know the difference. But this is one of those things that when you go up and touch them, they really have an excellent feel to them. And they're paint grade, so they really feel right. Or I would not use them. But I was at another project this morning that's about 16 years old, and the columns still look great. They feel great. I didn't hug them or anything, but I went up and touched them, and they feel really good. So, I understand the idea behind the guideline, but again, this is a new porch application in this case.
So what I would ask is that as the commission provides comments, that you let us know if you support or do not support the alternative material, and if you would support it moving forward, or if you would like this to come back to historic zoning for a formal vote. Thank you.
Susan?
I have to say I'm sitting on the fence on this. So I honestly couldn't say if I would vote for it or not.
Yeah, I'm in the same spot. Is it purely just the reason it's not going back with wood, just the cost issue, or is it?
I typically would spec these instead of wood
Instead of
columns
wood.
anyway,
Okay,
in just about any situation.
yeah, okay.
Frankly.
And I guess as far as whether it goes to a vote or not, my thought is either staff has the ability to approve it or not, and if it's here, I don't think we can vote today, even if we're all in agreement to skip. Like, it either needs to be a staff approval or it would need to come to us, I would think, at the meeting.
So, today though, do you feel like it should be a staff approval?
Oh, gosh. I'm not sure about that. I don't know.
So that if it
Susan's
helps,
enough.
the historic district design guidelines recommend that porch materials be wood, and that one maintain and repair deteriorated porch elements, which these were, as needed and with materials that match the original. So the original were wood.
Well, but that confused me a little bit because I saw Kevin's excellent little example here, or exhibit, where he cites to the 1913 capitals as cast terracotta stone material, painted to look like wood. But then it goes on, Kevin, and says a cast column would not be too far out of historic context. So I wasn't, like, I was going with you because I see the detailing there, and if that was cast, but I wasn't sure about the next sentence where it said it wouldn't be too far out of historic context, like, because if it was cast terracotta stone.
Yeah, I think a stone column is really the benchmark of all columns, and even the wood columns were basically mimicking the stone columns. So we could get into a philosophical discussion about that. I think Aaron Rietveld put this together, and I think he was just commenting that when the porch was originally done, that they actually weren't totally wood columns either. They had the
Okay,
terracotta.
so it was a blend, so
It was a blend.
The cap
The
with
cap
the
and
detail
all
Yeah.
on top of
Yeah.
the wood. Okay,
Yep.
all right, that was, because that gave me some comfort.
Interesting, and that's
Yeah.
part of the reason I wanted to bring it forward, because it was partial wood and partial terracotta.
Right, okay, that's helpful, thank you for clarifying
You're
that.
welcome.
So, go back to my
I'm
question.
not sure.
And Susan's a no. So where are you, Mr. Laster?
Well, first of all, if you were to use a wooden column, what type of wood is spec'd for those columns?
They had it's the same company that makes the wood columns. And I don't know that the spec is in here, and not sure that I can answer. I do know that they're solid all the way through and that they're paint grade on the exterior, and not stain grade, but paint grade. So, yeah, I don't have that spec with me, but yeah, they're solid.
So I see that the columns that were on, that terracotta portion must have been an ionic. They were ionic, weren't they, in that shape and look?
It
Yes.
appears to be, yes.
So I looked up, I was just curious about other guidelines in cities where historic guidelines are concerned, and about using alternate materials in the historic districts. And it turns out that the city of Columbus actually did a survey of like cities that were they're similar to their size. Nashville happened to be one of them, and Memphis was another one in our area. And both Memphis and Nashville, their guidelines do not support alternate materials, and our guidelines don't either. I know at Splendor Ridge, we approved some alternate materials for new construction that had to do with corbels or brackets.
Right.
But this is historic structure, and I really hesitate to go down the road of actually approving alternate materials in historic districts, especially where they can be seen. I think we open up ourselves to a lot of people wanting to do that with porch railings and all kind of the things on historic structures. And I just don't think it's a good idea to do that. And I would rather see them wooden. And who knows 25, 50 years from now, when I'm not here, somebody's they may say, oh, that column is rotting, I want to replace them. And we saw that photograph, we want to go back with ionic columns. I mean, rot is just something that happens to wood over time, and it gives the opportunity for change. So I wouldn't support the polystone column.
Okay.
Mary?
Excuse me, I would concur with the comments that have been made of sticking to the guidelines and the wood material.
Kathy?
How many columns we're talking about? 4?
4.
2 engaged, or the engaged are going away?
I think the engaged have gone away. I
Okay.
don't think I have that drawing. You know, no, that's not true. The engaged are still there, and I think that's why he showed the square column as well, because it would be a halved
Okay.
column on those.
So that'd be 4 and 2 engaged.
2
or 6.
engaged,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So you're not talking a lot. Which, is it a round or a square column?
They're round on the front of the porch, and the engaged are square.
Or squared, okay.
In the what square?
The engaged columns are
engaged to the brick.
rectangular, they're half
Okay,
squares.
okay,
so
I got you.
You
rectangular.
can see those on the screen here.
I got you.
So I would be, as much as I understand about a good synthetic replacement and the consideration of how it's made and how it feels and how it takes to paint, and that hand that you get with a well-made composite material, and there are excellent ones out there, I would not support it for this one because of this building. Sorry. I would stick with the guidelines.
I think that's true. On this historic structure, on a new building, probably.
Yeah.
I think that's the point with all this.
I think it's a little contradictory with the idea of being able to use composite sidings on buildings. But I understand.
This is,
But
This is-
composite siding is not recommended for
Yeah.
use on historic structures, only on additions to
On-
historic
right.
structures.
Right. And we've
And new
been,
construction.
we have really tried, unless it was just an extenuating circumstance, to stick with wood siding on historic buildings.
Right, to
Not
this,
the additions, but.
to this point, if this building was clapboard siding that needed replacement, we'd be requiring replacement in kind, not the fiber cement.
Okay.
okay, so that answers that
Yeah,
from
I
this
guess
feedback.
so.
Thank you.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, thanks.
Merry Christmas, Kevin.
Merry Christmas, guys. You would have thought I would have gotten a little gift today, but, see ya. I will.
All right, alterations and additions for our next item at 264 Natchez Street.
And Mr. Chair, I'm recusing myself from this.
Oh, yeah.
because I'm on the
That's
building
right.
committee, but they said since we weren't voting, that I could just sit back there.
I'm not sure Ms. Pierce had her microphone on, so I just wanted to state that she has asked to
Mr. Chair,
recuse.
I am recusing myself because I've been intimately involved with this project.
So don't sit back there and make faces at us then.
I won't, but you all will meet Mr. Cleve Solomon.
This is Mr. Cleve Salmon. He is with the African American Heritage Society's architectural design team. And then we also have Mr. Robert here, right? I'm sorry, I can't see you with your mask on.
Harvey Christmas.
Harvey,
yeah,
I'm
there
sorry,
Harvey.
I can't even see around
We
Mr.
got
Cleve here,
Harvey.
who's with the African American
Right.
Heritage Society Board. And they are talking about some
Merrill Williams.
partial demolition and addition and some site changes to the property, Merrill Williams House on Natchez Street. I would remind each of you to speak into the mic, please. And the light's on, that means the mic is
My
on.
mic is hot.
Yes,
Okay.
and you've given us a lot of information. To
Okay.
go through, which we have, so I'm just for the sake of time that we've got.
Straight.
Just get to the construction part of it, the demolition and the construction part of it, if you would, and focus on those pieces.
Absolutely. And Mr. Chairman, member of the board, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. So the project is to renovate the Merrill Williams home. In the process, and I need to go through the plan just so you can have a sense for where the modification will be. So we're looking at restoring the exterior, the main entrance, the living, the hall, back to its original design. Towards the back of the building, we've got a den, and it's not clear on the date that that den was constructed, but Dr. West, he's a historian, is of the opinion that that came much later on, just based on the type of construction and how it was done. So the building will be used as a community center, and so there's a couple of upgrade that needs to happen. We need to make the ground floor ADA accessible, and also the second level will be made ADA accessible. So we're going to take advantage of converting the den to the back into, if you were to flip all the way to, we'll be converting that to an entry foyer, providing a wheelchair access from the parking in the back, providing for an elevator to provide access to the upper floor, and then providing for an ADA toilet room. So that portion of the existing structure needs to be, I mean, we're seeing it as being converted, but basically we're demolishing it and constructing a new two-level structure. Now, the existing second floor toilet also is not original to the building. That came much later. And we're experiencing significant moisture infiltration. The floor, the wall is deteriorated. There's mold and mildew. So that portion of the building has to be redone in any event. So that's the key part of this project. Basically, the building will be used as a community center. MTSU will have access to the library to do research, not just on this building, but the African American history. So they'll be partnering with us and have access to use the building. The offices will be used by members of the board and like community meeting rooms. So the decision today is for the approval, not just for the restoration, but to make that addition to the back.
Thank you. I do have some comments I'd like to share. The project itself, the proposal, is fantastic. We're really excited as a city to see something happening with this building. It has been listed in the Historic Preservation Overlay at the request of the African American Heritage Society very recently, and it's such an important building, and this is such an important step to highlighting how it's important, and the partnership with the Center for Historic Preservation will be a great addition to the Natchez Street Historic District. I think the project is coming along really nicely. I just have a couple of comments. As this moves forward for a COA, I think it's very important for the applicant to better define the areas where the proposed demolition is taking place on the floor plan itself. So it can get lost when you're looking at that. So I would recommend that the applicant take the proposed or the existing floor plan and use a different color to outline the areas of disturbance, the areas where demolition is taking place. And also, because the design guidelines are very thoughtful about why demolition should and how it should be considered, the applicant should provide a narrative to explain why the areas that are being proposed to be demolished are being demolished, and why that rationale should be considered by the commission. So Mr. Salmon had commented on that briefly here, but we do need that in writing to justify one of the criteria in the design guidelines. If the area itself is not contemporary to the historic portion of the building, then perhaps that could be appropriate to remove that. But that's something that the commission needs to have as part of its application to consider, as well as staff.
Okay.
Okay, the other thing I wanted to know is it appears to staff that there's a bit of a scale congruency issue on the proposal. So if you look at the screen here, this is A2.1, and you look at the side elevation, I'm sorry, that's existing. Yes, I want to show you existing. So you can see existing, and you can see the area that's being proposed to be removed is this upper story area, as well as this area in the back. It reads very much as a dormer with a one-story addition, But if you look at the proposed, which you see here, you can see it almost appears to be a 2-story addition to a 1.5-story scale building. I think there are some ways we can fix that to read more congruent in scale. And one of the ways I feel that could be done is, particularly on the other side that you see here, is to limit the size of the windows on the addition to no larger than what you see on the half-story on the existing building. You see this fenestration's bigger than what you see here. And I also think that perhaps the overall roof ridge can be lowered to really help adjust that to feel like a 1.5-story scale as opposed to a full 2-story scale. Windows sills should align roughly with that of the existing. I can't tell exactly, but I feel that because these windows are sized larger than what you see on the original structure, that the sills are actually lower than what you see on the historic structure. So those sills should be in rough alignment and not lower than what you see here. I also wanted to note that it's not clear from this plan set if there is an inset or offset on this addition. The guidelines would recommend an inset in this location, an inset meaning that the addition sits back from the existing facade wall. That should be at least 6 inches, if not a foot. 6 inches to a foot is typically recommended. And that helps break that facade plane and feel like it's very clear to the public where the original form is versus the addition. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Why don't we go through the pictures if we can, and
Okay.
just talk to us in terms of what is coming off of there, what you want to demolish.
Okay?
And then we can go, do what? Yeah, the photographs, yes, not the drawings.
Okay, this page here, Jim.
Do what?
The page
Yep,
here.
yep, yep,
Okay,
yep,
great.
yep. So let's
Do you want to-
just take the, let's take the front, just walk through the whole.
Sure. Now, the front of the building as I maintain its integrity from weathering. You know, we've got the
Right.
overhang, we've got the shutters. So the windows and the materials in the front are pretty much in good conditions. And we see those as pretty much a restoration. You know, replace,
That's
removing and
music to
restoring.
Mr. Laster's ears. That's in good condition.
Yeah, those will be pretty much restored. As you go around the left side,
But would you take off the porch roof? The
so
front porch?
the roofing material will be replaced, the fascia, the trim, all of those will be replaced
Okay.
because it's not clear from that side, but those have, there's a lot of decay
Yeah,
in
that's
that
fine,
area.
that's
So
fine,
those will be
okay.
replaced with like. We're going back with like material. The main entry, the columns would be stripped and sanded and repainted because those are in real good condition. The front main entry door will be restored, replaced, and also the windows. We did notice, and I guess we'll have to do a little bit of investigation in the front, but along the side where the siding has deteriorated,
Yes.
we noticed that there is no sheathing behind the siding. The siding is attached directly to the studs. Yeah, we saw that as you get around the back of the building. Now, most of the weathering takes place on the southeast and east side facade.
Okay, that
because
makes
there's-
sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. Side, and then where you've got they've got a lot of trees. It's not allowed to drought, so there's a lot of weathering. So we're kind of opening up a can of worms there. I think once we take those.
You've got an
side-
old house, you're opening up a can of worms, I understand.
Yeah.
But talk about the left rear corner, what
Okay, so
what
the
would
left.
be pulled off of that? What are you going to demolish off of that?
Okay, so the brick chimney and that single level structure.
Okay,
That portion will be removed.
okay,
And then on top of the roof, you see a little thing sticking out there, a little appendix sticking out there. That's the second floor toilet that was added.
Yes, I see it. Okay.
That, it's in real bad shape. There's a tarp over it. It leaks like a sieve, so that will be removed. And then that first level structure will be removed.
To the right of the one with the
To the-
chimney?
No, to the left, in the back.
Right, but that single level with the double windows in it to the
the
right of
right?
the chimney, that would come off, right?
No, we're gonna basically keep that and restore
Okay.
it. The structure, we'll work with the structure as best we can. I suspect once we get in there, we may have to reframe.
Be some surprises, all right.
Yeah.
So if you
to
look at the left rear corner photo,
the left, yeah,
it's the area where that chimney is, that whole single-story area is proposed to come off. And then if you look at the
and
right
if
side
you look at the right
photo,
side photo,
you can see that, and you can also see that
Right.
dormer that was added to the top where that restroom
That-
is, that's
yeah.
proposed to be removed as well.
and it's, there's a couple of things, structurally also, it's just unstable, especially the second floor. There's really no way to reframe it and reuse it. So it just makes sense to reframe the second level and the lower level.
Okay, I think that's good. Let me stop you there. Does anybody have any comments on what he's wanting to take off?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Kathy?
I'm looking at the drawings that you've done, and I can see the dashed lines as you were talking through the photos.
Right.
I was able to see the dashed lines of what you do want to demolish. It seems like it's a lot, but I understand about the rot, the deterioration. I think, as Amanda mentioned, the narrative on what you're going to be demolishing and removing from the building, and of course documenting photographs of what was once there, and giving us maybe a clearer footprint, like the plan view of like really what is going, other than the dashed line, like the highlighted or color the areas.
Sure.
Would be really helpful, but it helps me to go, I understand why you're demolishing it. Is there any need for an engineer to give us any type of reporting?
We do have a structural engineer.
Okay, I think I saw that in your list of documents.
Do you want to
Good.
speak to what that said? Do you mind?
Well, the engineer did have some concern about the sheathing needs to be replaced. We have to put that back. It provides lateral bracing for the wall. Plus, we have to bring it up to current seismic design. As far as the existing floor joists, we're not going to be replacing those. We're going to be splicing up next to it with the new joist. So the existing would be a part of the story. The floor sags. I mean, in the living room, it's about 2-inch from one side, but we're not going to try to level that. It's, as I say, it will be a part of the whole history of the building. But we will go back underneath with new framing, new support to make whatever is there now structurally safe.
Did Dr. West have an estimated date of construction for the additions by chance?
Estimated date for construction? I mean, we are actually pursuing getting a contractor on board to work with us as a part of the design team.
We
And
still have requests for qualifications for contractors. We're just waiting to get them back in so we can determine
once we get a contractor, we'll be more ready to look at the schedule. But I would see this happening, within the next 6 months or so. We'll be ready to.
Yes, we have sent out requests for qualifications for contractors. Only thing we're doing now, we're waiting for it to come back in, and hopefully we've got our deadline date of around by January 1st. So we get a contractor, see what they are seeing, and maybe within the next 3 or 4 months, we can get started on it.
I'm sorry, Harvey, I might have been unclear. I meant, did Dr. West give an estimated date of construction of the additions that you're proposing to remove from the house? Like, the additions that are on the house, do you have an idea of when they were built?
Oh, the time of the,
time.
no,
Yes.
no, no, we don't have a,
The additions, I can say was probably in the early 60s,
Okay, that's okay, I think we're,
Yeah.
because that's when my classmate
Well, we
began to come out, and Mr. Williams built the upstairs for her, the bathroom, and the additions were built for his daughter.
okay. All right, Amanda, do you have any other comments? I think we can just give him some feedback.
No, I'm great. I look forward to your feedback.
Susan, do you have any comments?
So if I understand this correctly, Dr. West is recommending that this be removed.
yes,
So-
he was the one who actually,
So he has a pretty good idea of what it should and shouldn't be, and I appreciate his comments.
And perhaps it would be helpful if the application had a note from Dr. West. Is that what you're suggesting?
A what?
Maybe Dr.
Recommendation
West
or
provides
something.
a letter to them with his recommendations
that-
that
yeah,
they can
sure.
put in the application. That would be helpful,
Yeah,
Susan.
he knows what he's talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments on the drawings?
I think that obviously, when you're putting in an elevator, you have to have the second floor for it, and apparently what's already there is just not going to work. So I feel like what you're trying to do is it's not going to disturb the house, and I've been out to the house that was there at the dedication, and so I know what it's all about, and I support this, quite frankly, because I think it will really help, and it's going to be such a great addition to this community.
thank you.
Josh?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm very excited about what y'all are doing. I have a now 18-year-old son who we rode bikes by that house many, many years, a long time ago. And so I'm thrilled to see that this is going to be taken care of and restored. I would say I echo staff's comments about some of the size and scale issues with the addition. It does read pretty large to me. On the demolition request, I would just say, I know Mr. Buchanan, I know this is a draft report. He really needs to walk through the requirements of, to have a demolition request. So just make sure he is following whatever support needs to be provided from an engineering standpoint to support the demolition piece, if that makes sense.
So Josh, are you suggesting that the structural report just needs to be beefed up a little bit?
Well, I don't know that it was drafted to address that. It seems like it's an overall assessment of the building
Right.
and lots of things. And I think this commission just has to be very careful when it comes to demolition requests. So some of the questions that were asked were about when that addition was made, and if it was made in the early 60s or in the 60s at all. It's going to be beyond the 50-year mark, so such that it is historic. If it was newer, then that, to me, would be a difference, but it is part of the historic structure now by virtue of the timing. So I just think make sure that Mr. Buchanan really addresses what's required and when you come to present to the commission. And I respect Dr. West as well, but look very closely at what is required in the ordinance to support a demolition request and make sure Mark addresses those things. I think that will go a long way in being helpful for me to be able to support that, because we've got to be even-handed about that with
Right.
everybody.
Well, I live in an old house, and I know all my siding is nailed directly to the studs. It's just how they did it.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure why. I guess it was just easier. So, if I take a marble in some rooms and put it on one side, it will roll to the other. And that's just how old houses are. When I look at, and I'm assuming, so will the house be used to interpret the Merrill Williams families and all that live there and the change over time, and so the elevator, I heard something about an elevator. Why was an elevator necessary?
So the upstairs will be used as offices. Members of the board, maybe, I mean, I've got offices, but I could probably see a small meeting room.
So it's not
basically
required
to
by code?
provide, I'm sorry?
Code doesn't require it.
Well, just to provide
Access to.
ADA access for
Because some
for
of
the
our
elderly.
historians not able to
Well, yes.
climb the steps.
And they've asked,
Steps are the old steps, real narrow, steep.
Members of the
There's no way.
neighborhood would need that to be able to access the upper
Just to
floor.
get
So it's a
access.
desire of the African American Heritage Society.
And I would like to see that addressed. I mean, that's a very good thing to do. When I look at the photographs, I'm looking right now at the left side on the photographs, and I see the proportion and the form of the house with the shed dormers that come off the front and the back. And then I look over at the rear left corner, and I see the change over time that's happened with the additions that have been brought out. I mean, there's just something, if you're interpreting this as where the family lived and the life that happened there, I mean, there's just something, and I hate to use the word charming because maybe that's overused, but there's just something that it says, you know, a family lived here. When I look at the drawing of what's proposed in the second-story addition, it looks like you lose some of those shed dormers on the back. I mean, it looks like things have changed so much that you don't get this form where you see the gable and the two shed dormers at the top. I'd like to maybe see if an addition is done, something that's more in keeping, that keeps this form of the house, but at the same time gives an addition on the back that doesn't overwhelm what the house looks like.
yeah, we're going from 1 story to 2 story, but I do understand the second level, maybe that could be more appear to be a half story, except we have the elevator that needs the height, the overrun.
That is a challenge.
It is, and the elevator was one of the key discussion towards why we need to demolish that den. There's just no way to get the elevator because we need a pit, you know, without creating new foundation. So then Dr. West said, well, you know, I'm okay with demolishing it. But that is the challenge. How do we not only incorporate the ADA access requirement, but we're looking at a 8x8, right now we're looking at a CMU hoistway that needs a certain minimum height above. So now the kitchen, that stays, right?
It's the kitchen, is that what I'm seeing on the
If you
rear
look at the
left
left-
corner?
Yeah, that,
If you're on A 2.4, which I have on the screen, I'm highlighting the kitchen.
yeah,
Okay, so that's the kitchen.
Yeah, and that stays.
All right.
So that portion of the bill is original. Above that, you know, you're looking at the original house. To the left, and we can make those windows more in keeping with the original and tone that down. That can be done quite easily. But I do need the height for the elevator.
And so at this elevation, and we see what I'm looking at is the upper left corner, where the addition joins the house, is that smooth? I mean, does it stay within the same, or does it set back some?
Okay, right now we're showing it aligned. I recently received the dimensions for the elevator, and it doesn't pass, I think I've got it. The short answer is we can recess it, because the elevator doesn't need to be as big as I've shown it. So we'll be able to recess it so it's set back from that exterior facade.
And that may help break up what I'm seeing a little bit.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
Thank you.
Kathy?
So the original footprint to the additions that are on the back, the existing additions that are going to get demolished, the kitchen stays.
Right.
And then that other back room, the new addition, does it go over the footprint of the old
Exact-
addition?
It would be the exact.
It is
well,
the
what I'm
exact
showing you
footprint.
there is the exact footprint, yeah.
Okay,
The footprint does not get any larger.
okay.
From what I'm hearing, it probably would look better if it's a little smaller on the side.
The
That
setback.
may be helpful.
But
That
the
may be
intent,
helpful
yeah,
in
we're
setting
not-
it back.
Setting back maybe 6 inches or so, I can do that.
And then reducing the height on it so it doesn't read as a 2-story, but a 1.5.
More like a 1.5, yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
And then the ramp that's on the back, does that attach to the house? Or does it
It's, yes. it
step
runs along
away
the-
a little bit from the house? And is it wood or concrete and wood or
It's- well, Right
poured
now, it's concrete
foundation?
to match the front porch, which is concrete. The columns will be wood. The railing would be wood.
So it appears to, if you look on a 2.3, it does tie to the addition, but it doesn't tie to the original form of the house because
Okay.
it's functioning almost as a porch with a ramp on it.
Good, okay, thank you.
I had one other question, and I may have misunderstood. The front door and side lights, did I hear they were to be replaced?
No. The front porch, the main entrance would all be restored. And we're gonna make an effort to reuse, the light switches, the outlets, all the existing, the grills, that is in the house. We're gonna restore it and basically use it. Light fixtures will be restored, change out the bulbs. The goal is the main house will be restored back to the original design. Now, inside where we have the conference room, we'll be upgrading the electrical lighting, but the fixtures would be pretty much appropriate to the period.
That's very exciting.
It is. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Jim, did you have comments?
I don't have
Okay.
That's great. I think
Okay.
you're headed in the right direction.
Thank you so
very
much.
much.
We're so happy to have you here, and Emily and I will be in touch with you for next steps.
I think you got a good assistant here by you.
Well, that's the history, yeah.
Thank
and
you, Harvey.
he's-
Thank
He's
you,
been
Cleve.
very helpful. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Miss Alma.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, we're ready for the next demolition at 1309 Adams Street.
Okay. Miss Calloway, the property representative, could not be here today, so we have Miss Emily Brown here as her representative. Just to give some feedback, this project is, this proposal is for demolition, and because Miss Calloway is, for a very good reason, not able to be here today, Miss Brown might not be as familiar with some of the details, but
More. More,
so we'll try our best to be able to
That's
answer any
fine.
questions.
That's fine. Would you
Thank
introduce yourself then?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you very, very much for giving me this opportunity to talk with you this afternoon. My dear beloved niece just presented me with the great nephew.
It's your microphone. If you'd
I'm
hit that,
sorry.
make sure that green light's on.
It is on. It is
Perfect,
on.
perfect.
Thank you very kindly. On the 5th of this month, so she could not be here, and I am standing in for her. So I probably know as much about the property or more than Rachel does. First of all, go ahead. It is our property, and for over 20 years, there wasn't as much peace as maybe we'd like for there have to been from my uncle's widow and us as the remainder men who did everything that we could to try to keep the property intact and really wanted to go in and make renovations. But the widow was much older, had sons who were interfering, and so, of course, the property over the last 20-plus years just depreciated. When we finally, through attorneys, were able to get into the property, it looked like they had just used some sort of rubber fixture in the living room to try to prop up the floors, and went in and even did more structural damage. When we were able to get possession of the property 3 or 4 years ago, immediately we started calling in contractors to try to, restore it. But in fact, nobody would touch it and told us that it needed to be demolished. The final straw was one day I got a call from the neighbors from whom I'd gone to school with their older sisters. So we have been here forever and ever and ever in Franklin. And that it had been condemned. So immediately my niece and I got the contractor to go downtown to see what needed to be done. There was another house that also the widow had as income property that we immediately were able, it is also in the Hitchie community. Also, we did get the permit to have it torn down and demolished. And of course, we immediately came forth to try to get this house demolished as well, with the full intent of, we lost one air property when the Mac Hatcher Parkway came through. So we have every intention of keeping this property as a single-family dwelling and putting it back in the shape, pretty much just rebuilding the house. Also, and very, very much being appreciative of the historic community and protecting the integrity of the community. That is our intent. But everyone that we have contacted to help us in this situation has said that it's just structurally, it cannot be saved. So that is the reason we are before you, asking if we can get the permit after it was condemned, and we were told that it needs to be torn down. We just want to do that so we can move forward with building, of course, keeping the historic integrity of the neighborhood in context, as well as to build back pretty much similar to what it is. We are very, very happy that our niece has decided that the East Coast is not the place for her, and she wants to come back and raise her son in Franklin. And since I still reside here, that's just music to my ears. So that's an overview. Thank you very kindly.
And thank you very much, Ms. Brown, for stepping in for Ms. Callaway. I did want to note there is a structural engineer's report that was provided. Some of the conclusions that you can see on the screen are suggesting, while there aren't specific cost estimates provided for rehabilitation versus demolition and building back in kind, there are some general statements related to the concern that providing the needed restoration would be expensive and could exceed the value of the historic structure. Generally, the Historic District Design Guidelines would recommend having those cost estimates as a consideration for the commission as it considers the request for demolition. The future action on site was not noted, but Ms. Brown did indicate that the intent is, if this is to be removed, that a single-family residence be built back in place, of course, pending a certificate of appropriateness from the Historic Zoning Commission. I did want to give a little bit of background too. As Ms. Brown noted, this property has been condemned by the city. The city does not indicate through condemnation that demolition is required, but it understands that this is in the historic district and should be reviewed quite extensively in that respect. But it has been condemned, meaning that it's not deemed to be habitable. So if you have any specific questions about the structural engineer's report, I can try to answer those as best as I can. I'm not familiar with, I don't know how familiar Ms. Brown is with the structural engineer's report, but hopefully one of us can help answer any questions you
We'll
might
talk
have.
about the condemnation. How does that fit in relation to us?
It doesn't necessarily,
Okay.
It should not necessarily influence your decision-making
Okay.
about how the guidelines are applied. Thank
Does
you.
that just mean it's not presently habitable?
That's
No.
what that
Okay.
means,
It
yes.
hasn't been for several years.
Right,
I
but the
live
po-
several houses down, so I,
Probably about 5 or 10, and because somebody was living there,
Yeah.
it was, yeah.
We do have our building official, Mr. Tosh here, who would be able to answer any questions
he-
you have. He
I'm
did
sure he
inspect the
can.
property.
But the point being, it may not be permitted for somebody to inhabit it today, but it doesn't mean that the building has to be
Torn down.
destroyed.
Absolutely, that is
Okay, I
absolutely
just want to make
correct.
that clear.
Thank you. Randy, did you want to speak, or did anyone have questions for Mr.
Randall, you
Tosh?
have any comments on it, just in general?
It was brought to my attention, it's been on our attention for quite some time, but the engineer's report was brought to my attention. And Amanda, that last paragraph, one of the last paragraphs in the conclusion there, the engineer, he indicates that, you know, your electrical systems and your mechanical and the moisture, the problems that the house is now currently suffering from, we did not feel like it would be safe for someone to habitate this property. We're not trying to encourage the commission to offer it up for demolition, that we will respect whatever decisions made by the commission at that time. From our perspective, we just do not, we want it to be safe, and we want to, we would like, if any doors or anything are not able to be secured, that then maybe we board those up just to keep from us having any, say, squatters or animals in and out of the house, to make the situation worse. But the engineer did indicate that likely 50 to 65% of the critical structural components and systems are going to have to be replaced. So it's pretty far gone at this point, based on the reports and the photographs I reviewed.
And it has been for years, as you know. I was in there, I guess, when Ms. Gosey was still alive.
Yes, yes.
And it was in rough shape then, so
Yeah.
I know it, and I think the big thing, and I'll let other people comment, but I think the big thing is to take this report, and we got to have some numbers to justify
Certainly.
demolishing. And it's good to know that currently I guess Ms. Callaway is the owner?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
Yes.
It's good to know that she intends to build it,
Yes.
rebuild it, or build it. Build a new house.
Absolutely, and in fact, any of the structural, because I mean, the crown molding and still things in it that are very, very beautiful, I guess because they were higher in the ceiling, that have not been destroyed, and the old iron foot bathtub, anything that can be salvaged out of it, we will, because we very, very much would like to have preserved it, but there were circumstances over which we had no control, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I understand. Okay. Comments?
I would echo the chair's comment that we really need numbers on this.
Sure.
And I think that will help us determine how we should move forward. Thank you.
Josh?
Yep. I would say, I would echo that. I think this engineer's report is lacking, in my opinion. It's got a lot of likelies in there. You know, the subject dwelling has likely sustained consequential structural damage, like has it or has it not? I think that the engineer, I would again just encourage your niece and the engineer to look closely at what the guideline, what the ordinances require for this, and to that point, like the 55 to 60 or 50 to 65% of the structure and or critical components. What are those numbers? I think we really just have to have that, because there's a lot in here, but a lot of it's vague.
Certainly,
Yeah,
certainly.
yeah.
It needs to be, it is, rather than.
Yeah,
Yes,
and just more certainty, and maybe, I mean, it might be helpful to have the engineer here, depending. I'm not saying that's necessary, but I don't ever think that hurts. So, yeah, I would just track that closely, because
Certainly.
I do think it's just a serious request to take one down.
Absolutely.
As Josh says, I mean, it is a serious request, and we think about that. And I think about two other houses, and they're on Third Avenue. One was the home of Miss Hazel Scott, and I would say that it probably really wasn't habitable either. And then the one that's next to the railroad track, I mean, the actual floors had separated from the seals. I mean, it was that bad. And both of those, the bones of those houses were saved. And I'm wondering with this, like with the studs and the actual ceiling joists and the overall the way the house was constructed and framed, if that might be salvageable. You know, you may have to replace floors, the actual flooring, the material that was used in the house, I don't know if it's plaster or all sheetrock, but gutting it and then actually going back with new electrical, new plumbing, but using the actual, you know, good bones of the house, and they still may be good for the most part. And that's what I would like to know more about.
Okay, certainly.
Mary?
I would concur with what Brian was saying, and actually, the house that is behind the house by the railroad track.
On 3rd Avenue.
On 3rd Avenue. It actually, the flooring was gone, pretty much everything was gone, but they were able to take that frame and redo it, and it today, I know the owner, I'd love to show it to anyone. It's actually online because they lease it out. And that would be the approach I would like to see. I believe that with the value of historic properties in downtown Franklin, I can't imagine that that would be more expensive approach than just raking it and building a new one. And then you wouldn't have at the end what you have, which is a really wonderful historic home.
And
Thank
we
you.
could not agree with you more. It's just, it's a foundational problem.
Well, yeah,
that's-
and that, I mean, I have actually, another
mess, yes.
examples are the houses on First Avenue. Rudy Jordan did 2 or 3 of those over. The foundation was gone. They were able to repair that. So I'll be leaning toward hoping we can find that solution.
Thank you.
Kathy?
We're not opposed, if we can, yes.
Yeah, I feel the same too. The engineer report mentions that it was constructed in the 1900s. Do we know the exact date? 19?
I want to say
20, 40,
1911.
50?
Oh, no, I think earlier than that, probably about 1911, 1915, something like that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay, we're ready for the next one. Recommendation for conceptual subdivision, the middle 8, proposed at 228 Franklin Road. Kaiser Vrogren.
Okay, you guys are welcome to come up here. Allow me a second to get your items pulled up.
And because of some time constraints, if everybody would just focus on the design points of this application.
Half an hour. We're going to be quick.
I'm sorry, Lois. I hear my voice.
Feel for you.
Okay, I just want to give a couple of comments before we get started. This is not a COA application request at the moment. This is a preliminary conceptual development proposal. The Historic Zoning Commission will be very much involved with this, and that as it tracks through the city, the commission is asked to provide a recommendation to the Planning Commission and to the BOMA as to how appropriate this proposal would be in light of the guidelines that would apply, because the COA will be required at some point in time. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to the team here, and then I'll have some comments afterward. Thank you.
Thank you, Meta. Thank you for your time this evening. I know it's a long agenda. I'll keep it sweet and brief as we go through our presentation. Thank you for your time. I just want to briefly say that we've responded to staff comments, heard some of your feedback. We've provided additional documentation, graphics in the package so you can kind of interpret and clarify some things. We revised the townhome elevation along Liberty Pike. We talked about that extensively, lowered the height of that building. provide an elevation study to denote transition from building heights from Franklin Road to Jameson Station, to give you kind of guidance and clarity on how that works in terms of building height. We've provided an overall 3D illustrative graphic in the package that can really showcase the vision and character that we're searching. Last but not least, we showed photographs of a model, but we brought a model with us that you can physically touch, view, hold out. We'll bring that out in a second, just to really show the massing, scale, character, and how it fits in the fabric of the potential factory district. I'll turn it over to Toby and Amanda, talking about their vision and their passion about the project. I'd like to introduce Joe Antunovich as the architect. He'll talk a little bit about the design. So we'll just take it from here. We thank you. Amanda, if you wouldn't mind going to the overall graphic illustrative master plan, and we'll start going ahead. Thank you.
Is this on, Amanda?
If the green light's on.
Yeah, okay. I know how tired you guys are.
We've
Been watching you. Like, I don't even know how you guys do.
Riveting, isn't it?
It's but we love, first of all, we just wanted to say before we're going to talk for 3 minutes, but we love the Historic Zoning Commission because we've lived in a historic home for 30 years. And Mary Pierce has helped me protect the magnolias outside of my home. I've literally tied myself to those magnolias, protecting them. And when the 2003 tornadoes came in, you guys weren't here yet. And the tornadoes tore off our porch, and we were young. So we built that porch back exactly. Paid probably way too much. Way too much to build that porch back.
Exact wood, nails, everything.
Because we love Franklin, we love the historic. And I think when we presented last month, it was overwhelming. And I know this is an overwhelming thing because we've been thinking about it for 30 years. And you guys are like, oh, wait, what? Where is this? What are we talking about? And I want you to know that we've lived in this town and we respect this town, and we are rule followers. We literally designed this thing with the ordinances in our left hand and a pencil in our right, being very careful about setbacks and neighborhoods. And we had 4 meetings with our staff, kind of coming up with a concept and it was very collaborative. They changed some things, they made us move some things. We together came up with different ideas, a lot more courtyards, changing the buildings. And I just want to address, there is one place that is a little bit heavy, and that is that we have a lot of mass on the corner of Daniels and Liberty Pike. And I want to just talk about the reason for that. We are asking for 4 stories with a 5th setback. We're within 30 inches of Jamison. But height-wise, we're right on their height, but it might feel like, well, you guys aren't obeying the rules, and we're just asking that we were asked by the mayor to bring a diverse form of housing to the creatives in town in this area because of Jamison, because of the factory. It's an unusual area in Franklin. And he was like, well, if you can bring the creatives to town. And as we started to talk to people, we're like, our young people cannot live here. They can't afford to live in Franklin. So can this be a place where we can bring a more diverse type of living by bringing smaller units and more density to this area? If we don't bring the density, this will be a smaller development, but it will be for uber rich people. And so we know we're asking for something that you're like, oh, well, we have to think about that. But we just wanted you guys to hear our hearts on why we're even asking. It's not because we're trying to be obnoxious or we don't respect you. Like, every choice you make is for all of us, for this beautiful city. And we're really appreciative because we love Franklin. Is that?
Well said, dear. Well said.
You don't want, may I have a minute?
No, I think we're good. I think, so the reason that we're shooting for 4 with a 5th setback is because we feel like we have to get enough units, like she said, density, in order to serve up smaller units, to try to create a place there where more people can live, and in a diverse we could have diversity there as far as income levels.
Yeah. So we're going to ask our amazing Mr. Joe Antunovich.
And I'll say one more thing, sorry. I do think it's a great place to do that. And the reason I think it is because I've imagined that property for a long time. We bought it in '94, as I told you last time. And I've thought, what could be there? And I think with the factory sort of being rejuvenated into what maybe it should have always been, and Jameson Station on the corner, I just think it's a lovely place as long as we come off of our house and respect that as we move into that type of housing.
Thank you, Toby. I think it was,
Oh, he's
got one.
Your mic is on, sir? Is that mic?
Yes, it is.
the
Maybe
green,
draw it a
green
little
light's on. Is that?
Green light,
Am I
that's,
good to
that's,
go?
that's what we're looking for. It's
Green
Christmas
light.
time.
Some say I don't really need a microphone, but,
Okay, but the millions that are watching us want to be able to hear.
Actually, I've been watching your entire program this evening, and first I'd just like to say, thank you for what you do. This is fabulous what you do. I worked in Charleston, I worked in Georgetown, Alexandria, Lincoln Park, Chicago, and you're right up there with all of them.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I think the finished product, what you
Thank you.
have downtown, and everything you've said so far tonight, I stand right behind. So I want us to be collaborative. You won't hurt my feelings if you tell me that the baby is ugly. But I think what we're interested in is having a collaborative dialogue, and we're all grown people, and you know, just to.
Let me
would
just
like
assure
to
you,
move
that's
it
what
ahead.
we try to do. Sometimes we're successful in collaboration, and sometimes we're not. But anyway, that's our goal. And this community can benefit from whatever is done in these historic districts, and that's the value of having historic districts.
Well, and you do
And
it.
we can go off in another tangent, but not tonight.
Well, thank you. And we do it, you've been doing it one building at a time tonight. You've been doing it bigger buildings, smaller buildings, and I just respect that. I just wanted to say that
Thank you.
because it can be a heartless job sometimes too.
Oh, the pay is
So-
good, though.
So anyway, however, just with this quick site plan that we have here, we've read your 178 or is it 179 pages of requirements on this property, which I'm still not sure which all apply and which don't, and some are conflicting. And so if I'm being honest with you to say that I'm getting a little bit confused with some of it. But what we've tried to do, and you can see on the site plan, is respect our neighbors. That's the number one thing we've tried to do. Our setbacks from the historic properties on Franklin, our setbacks from the historic properties further to the south, and we are compatible in height with Jameson Station. In fact, the building that everyone says is too tall is only 30 inches higher than the top of the Jameson Station. So I just want to get that out there. Next slide, please. Amanda talked about how we'd worked with staff, I think 4 different occasions, and they came up with some wonderful ideas actually for us. We had many more roads. We've reduced the number of roads. We've come up with what I would like to think is a collection of cottages that actually face our neighbors all the way around to the west and to the south. Single-family homes, some townhomes, some duplexes. In fact, the duplexes was a staff suggestion. We've also integrated something that staff suggested was to make courtyards on Liberty Pike so that the building doesn't seem continuous, and also facing our neighbors to the south, and not have the buildings look so continuous in the facades and have there be much interest. So there would be variation along this wonderful street, Liberty Pike. What I'd like to achieve tonight, though, is respond to some of the comments you had and requests you'd made last time. And the first one is you said, hey, what does this building look like along Liberty Pike? What are the heights? What's the mass? And how does that relate to your neighbor across the street? So on this drawing here, we've got a big, long drawing, but we need to fill the center in so we can kind of roll out the drawing. But I think what you can see is starting to the left. Can you just move it? We need to, there, okay. The middle drawing is an elevation, if you ever were able to see
They
it.
all have it in front of them too, if that helps.
Yeah, they've got it on the computer, is that?
Yes,
okay.
and this is page
All right.
18 of that plan.
So if we started with the middle drawing, this is our proposed, this is the elevation of the street as you would see it after after we'd like to build it like this. And then above is the the factory and the elevation that would be mirrored on the other side of the street, and then a plan on the bottom. So if we look at the center drawing, all the way to the right, you see the Truett House. The Truett House is 30 feet tall to the top of the roof. As we come back along and hit our first development building, that would be a 2.5-story townhouse. Two levels on Liberty Pike. We've actually lowered the height of that building down to 29 feet, so that's actually a foot shorter than the Truett House. And this goes with trying to respect our neighbors on the historic properties along Franklin Road. The first building, our westmost building, is 36 feet tall. It's one setback level over 2 levels, and that is 36 feet tall. And then our other building at the corner of Daniels and at Liberty Pike is, as we discussed earlier, 1 level over 4 levels. So that's 57 feet tall. Jameson Station to the left is 54'6". So there's a 30-inch difference between those heights. Now, someone will say, yeah, but you've got more levels. Well, Jameson Station on the first floor, their first floor was built for retail, which is almost 20 feet high. That's almost 2 levels of residential. So as we start talking about height, we would like you to consider that difference. So if they had they built 4 levels of residential plus 1 on top, they would be practically the same number of stories that we have. But our heights are very comparable. Now, we do have, the street does slope, and also it drops off over 20 feet to the south on the property. Across the street, we have the factory building. Now, the factory building varies between 42 feet and 36 feet and 25 feet to the far east side. But it's very difficult. I mean, it's such a broad building. But you asked, how does it relate? And these two drawings show how it does relate on one side of Liberty Pike to the other. I'll move through these pretty quickly, and then we can come back if you have questions. Next slide. Another comment you had, I think we showed this partial elevation as we actually come through our new street, coming from Liberty Pike on the right and showing the single-family homes, a small three-unit townhome development on the corner. We showed that in the top picture. I think you were all aghast that it was so tall. You said, oh my goodness, could you make that smaller? And we've actually taken over 7 feet out of that building. You can see on the lower sketch, we are now at 29 feet. We're 2 levels on Liberty Pike and 3 in the back where we have the garage coming around. And it makes it much more compatible with the single-family homes as you drop up off over 20 feet coming down the hill through the property. Next slide. You asked, was it possible to get some 3D impressions of what this could look like? And we were trying to say, what did you mean 3D? And so go to the next slide, please. So we built a model. Charlie, can we pull that out, please? You haven't destroyed that, have you? Well, hand it around so that they can look at it, you know.
This is so old school,
Just
we
as-
didn't know how to do it.
You know,
Everybody's like, wait, who still
I-
does this thing?
It's like a little Monopoly board.
Yike. Or we could
Well,
stand
just
up.
hand it around. You're not gonna hurt anything. But I think what we wanted to show there was, as you look at all of these relative heights together, it's not this giant building looming above others. And I think you can hold it up and you can look down. You could even look, there was a question earlier about view corridors, you know, from view corridors all the way over from the west side of the property, looking back down Liberty Pike. Well, here you can lift it up and actually look down there, but you can see how actually low scale all of these buildings are. Now, if Jameson Station was not there, that'd be a different discussion, quite frankly. But it's there, it's establishing part of the urban makeup of what we have. Now that, with this whole idea of the factory district having Jameson Station, our development, stepping down as we come to the west, stepping down very much more than what we had originally, and then with the redevelopment of the factory, I listened intently to your discussions on the waste enclosures. Don't ask my opinion.
We'll give you some feedback, though, if you like.
We heard it all. We took copious notes. You didn't ask him what color brick or the color mortar.
Oh, that's to come.
Yes,
I'm
but
sorry.
Maybe they should just look a little more carefully. Did I say that? I'm sorry.
They're doing a great job over there, though, with that whole redevelopment.
Yes.
Aren't
They are
doing
just.
it is.
We're excited about it.
But I think when you look at our two properties together, and that's why, thank you for asking for this work, because you really can't just look at our property in a microcosm. You've got to step back and look at what's to the east, look at what's across the way. Heck, we are hundreds and hundreds of feet from our historic properties to the west. And we've made an intentional effort to set back from our neighbors to the south. And I think you can see it on the model there. We've gone to, I love this word, the cottages all the way around the edge. We're building a new street. That street's going to be just like this beautiful street that you've had. Well, they're still working on it right now as I came down. But, you know, Franklin Road with all of those period light fixtures and all, that's exactly what we're going to have coming through the middle of our property. So you asked for these different elements so that you could better understand what we're doing. And, you know, as part of our ongoing discussion with you, that's what we've come with tonight. You know, we've done a lot of work. We answered a lot of questions on the parking and the setbacks and the percentage coverage on the individual lots. I think we're under 30% on every individual lot, aren't we? I think that was, so we've given you a lot. I just hope we're not overwhelming you, are we? I mean, it's a big project and we understand this will take a while, but we wanted to come before you before Christmas with our feedback from our last meeting, and love to hear what your response is.
Well,
What I am dying to say, I just want y'all to know, we did streetscape downtown. We were required to do a model of downtown with every street light and street tree. So we've joined the club.
Oh, it's so hard. Did you use a 3D printer?
there weren't 3D printers. No, we had to get a person that did exhibits at the State Museum, did it for us.
Wow.
All right, let's have some feedback. Susan?
I'd like to give some comments.
Oh,
if I
excuse
may.
me, I'm sorry, I
Okay.
went out of order.
That's okay. So to help frame the discussion a little bit, again, this is a recommendation request at this point, so I'm not getting specific in staff comments to individual buildings per se. The applicant did a really good job talking about the things that they've addressed in the meantime, and we're really excited about this project. There's been a lot of response to the comments that they received. And I want to make sure everything's heard, so I'm going to wait till Gary's able to sit back down.
No, I'm just passing
Okay.
the model around so Susan can see it.
We could have made it
I did
bigger,
see
but
it.
it was
Thank
kind
you.
of fun, I
Yeah,
thought.
she did. And, yeah, we have a 3D printer at Belmont, so I figured that's how it was done.
Okay.
Well, there was a few, did you all
Did you see it,
this?
Josh? Yeah.
There's a few young people in our office have got some cuts on their fingers, but, this is kind of a combination of the old-fashioned way and then the 3D printing, so, anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's okay. So at this point in the process, the DRC's discussion should be focused on how the proposal relates to the context of its surroundings so that we can give a recommendation to the Planning Commission and then the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. That would be specific to building height, massing considerations, and setback considerations. So that's where we'll kind of keep those comments today. The applicant plans to ask for a plan amendment to Envision Franklin. Envision Franklin is our land use plan document. The design concept for this area allows for 3 stories, and the amendment that the applicant plans to request is to change that from 3 stories to 5 stories. They're looking for feedback from the DRC today on building height, most specifically, before they decide to proceed, because ultimately this project does require a COA. So the idea is that it goes through the process, and if it gets approved by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, then they want some predictability about how it might be considered by the Historic Zoning Commission. So is everyone clear on that? Okay. So it's my role as staff to provide you guidance on what the design guidelines say. On the Franklin Road Historic District design goals and policies, it is recommended that height be limited to 1 to 2 stories, that there be a gateway into downtown that emphasizes the historic character of the community, that one continue to project an open appearance by ensuring that new construction maintains a balance of buildings and roads and open space. That one maintain the established rhythm and spacing of buildings relative to the established context of the immediate area, and that one design any changes within the district to reflect and maintain the key characteristics of that context. So Franklin Road is primarily single-family residential as you go south of here, south of here into downtown. At this juncture, you have the factory, which is more of an industrial context. It is a large 2-story to single-story scale, and then you have immediately adjacent the Truett House, which is a large 2-story scale. So, considering height, how we perceive and measure height in the zoning ordinance is related to stories and not necessarily footage, which allows for a more organic streetscape. We don't want all our buildings to be exactly the same height. We do want some variation. So rather than have the same vertical footage, we would respond by having a contextual scale relationship, meaning stories. The guidelines state that height of new buildings should be consistent with the height of historic commercial buildings in the district, which should not exceed 2 to 3 stories. And the guidelines also reinforce the new building's compatibility with its context in terms of number of stories by recommending that one align architectural features in terms of the new nearby historic buildings in ways like floor-to-ceiling heights and cornice alignment, window and door heights, foundations, because that's what helps break up massing, and that's also how you read scale. So, for example, as the applicant mentioned, Jameson Station has a taller floor-to-ceiling height because it is a commercial building. So floor-to-ceiling height really defines how large your fenestration, your windows and doors are, and those should be compatible, especially on the same block face, but in the district in general. As far as setbacks, for larger redevelopment areas, the guidelines state that one should design for transitions between 2 different adjacent historic building setbacks on either side. So, for example, You have a residential building at the Truett House, and then you have a commercial building at Jameson Station. So there should be a transition in setback between the two, because the Truett House has a much deeper setback, and the Jameson Station sits on the street. So having some sort of a transitional setback would be helpful as you go away from the intersection down Liberty Pike. So at this point, I think instead of talking so much, I'm going to show you some key view sheds for this development in relation to the historic context. So what you see on the screen here is a key view shed. As you're traveling south on Franklin Road, you see the factory to the left, and you see the tower there, of course, which I'm excited to say has been painted, and one of the signs has been painted on it, which is very, very exciting.
Looks great.
So as you go to south on Franklin Road, you can see this area here is where the proposed project is, and the Truett House is located here. Okay, then next.
Can I just say something though, Amanda? Like, our project doesn't start till after the factory, after the tower, so it would be behind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next view shed I want to point out is looking east at the street intersection of Franklin Road and Liberty Pike. You can see the Truett House on the right here, obviously the factory here. You see Jameson Station in the back, and so this area here is where the proposed development will be, with the lined individual buildings and then the two larger multifamily buildings. And then key view shed number 3 is not this one. It is this one. So this is from the parking lot at the factory looking toward the proposed site. You see Jameson Station on the left. You see it's 3 stories with the walkout on the top. And this is the property proposed to be developed. So now I'm going to show you a view shed from Liberty Pike across the factory to highlight the factory and Jameson Station and the proposed development, the Middle 8, so that you can get a sense of the relationship between the buildings. So I'm going to try to do this carefully. Okay, so you can kind of see these side by side here. I can go to Google Street View and kind of toggle around, but I wanted you to be able to see these side by side. You can see that the rendering for the Middle 8 doesn't show the recessed 5th story, but it is assumed it would be visible from the street, given the glimpse of it at the top center here. So this is 4, this is 3 with the walkout on the top. So you can kind of get a sense of the scale relationship between the two. So for this time, I would turn it over to you all. Please provide feedback on the proposed number of stories, whether or not that's appropriate in light of the context, if the massing is appropriate, and if the setbacks from the sidewalk are appropriate. Thank you very much.
I'll go first.
Do. Fire.
First of all, I think we owe Amanda a big thank you. She's hung in here all this meeting and she can hardly talk. And I just had to say that because she worked very hard at this. I have to say that my concern is the stories, because some of these buildings have multiple stories, and that's what I understand we're supposed to be looking at, not the height. So, and what I heard, what I wrote down was more organic in that terms. And so, again, I'm going back to the stories. And it seems that the setbacks have been addressed. Is that correct? Am I correct with that? And Amanda? The
Has
setback-
or hadn't?
Have.
So the applicant did take staff's comments into consideration and have considered the use of courtyards. And I can try to get to that page. It might take me a second, but you can see here, there's courtyards integrated at the front facade areas at Liberty Pike that really help transition for setbacks. The townhome building may warrant additional setback from the street based on the DRC comments previously. I don't believe that's been adjusted since the last time we spoke about it. But ultimately, the transition, see the setback so deep, and maybe have this setback a little further so that you kind of get closer to the street gradually. So yes and no.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my comments.
Josh?
Yeah, so I think just to clarify, Amanda, the courtyards were there when we looked at this previously.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I tend to echo that concern about, I hear you on the height issue, the 30 inches. But if we're looking at the number of stories, I still just tend to have concerns about that building closest to Jameson Hall in the 5th story. And I appreciate you bringing down the townhouses that face Liberty. I do think if you could pull those back a little bit more, that would be helpful.
Brian?
So I also appreciate lowering that townhouse height and the 75-foot buffer between the Truett House and the new development. I moved to Franklin in '90. There were about 25,000 people here. Today, they're over 80. They say in 20, it's going to double. You know, where are all these people going to live? You know, I look at Creekside, and what we thought about Creekside. It has a rural, that is a rural character, that area. The factory, I don't see it as rural. I don't see the rural character. And I do think it needs more density there for the multifamily. And I applaud you. This is a very ambitious project. And there's been a lot of thought put into this. When I take that 3D modeling and I look down Liberty Pike, I mean, it is very evident that the right side of that street, I mean, it's the height is there. And I want us to have the density, but I don't want us to start giving us a Cool Springs feel. You know, where we've got the, you know, the high density and the height of the buildings. And I would have to say that I too have a concern about the height. I think two stories is too low, you know, in my opinion. I'd like to see it higher, but and I don't want to see it actually exceed the height of Jameson Station. I think we're setting a precedent there that the new buildings that come in can be higher than Jameson, and I think Jameson is maybe too high as it is. So those are my comments and feedback.
Thank you. Mary?
I agree with more density in this area, and the height is my concern, that it's going to read taller. It's sort of, what am I trying to say? In the inner city of Franklin, it's a profound change. The buildings on Main Street are about 36 feet tall, to give an idea. So that would be my concern.
Mary, isn't Harpeth Square that just got built is 4?
4, yes. And
with
the
setbacks.
reason, my reasoning, if you go and look at historic towns, generally the hotel will be the tallest building in the town. And I think we really stretched it as far as possible. You know, it was all, what am I saying, talk till it came out of the ground. So that would be where my concern lies, is in the height, not in the idea that we're putting more density there. And I share with you all every day the affordability situation in Franklin. It's just, you know, I'm happy my babies got in a little early, and I've got 2 children that live here, but I do understand that part of it. I'm sympathetic, but we have to look at the context of the whole town.
Kathy?
I like it. I like what it provides for community. I like how it feels in balance to the factory and what's happening with the factory and how that's developing community, not so much on the inside, but the outside. And I feel that in the space too. I appreciate that you took that townhouse building number 1 and lowered that one down. So that streetscape has a much more funnel effect, the lower in the front and then other things in. And those are the single family units, correct? Okay. What's the difference in unit numbers between 4-story and a 5-story? How many units are we adding by doing a 5th story? 20, 50?
So we're really not getting into that conversation. The
Okay.
commission's really looking at form
Okay.
and not at the number of units.
Okay.
Kathy, I think if we could kind of answer that, just as far as, I think, because what you're basically asking is, what does this decision come down to? And Amanda, if you can go to our site plan, one of the things that I really want to show you that we did, is we were told we can do these single-family houses and duplexes on the outside and rear load them. And one of the things that was really important to us was we side-loaded them because we're allowed by code outside of what you got, your jurisdiction, to go within 5 feet of our property line. So, but what we did was we said, no, if we back rear load them, what's gonna happen is we're gonna have to take down all those trees, all those old growth trees, and we will our neighbors on Old Liberty will feel very uncomfortable. So we side-loaded them so that we can keep all the old growth trees back there. And then we started talking to our Jamison neighbors. And they're like, we've shown this to them. I have so many emails from them saying, what can we do to help you develop this land? I can show you one right now. Because they live where they live. Because we all don't live in Lepus Fork. We could. We don't live on Legends Ridge. We don't live in West Haven. We live downtown because we want this walkable experience. You know, the people that live at Jamison, they live there by choice. They've moved from their houses in Lepus Fork or on Arno Road into downtown to have this urban experience. And so they are very like, we want the density, we want the people, we want the walkability, we want the coffee shops. Franklin Road, Liberty Pike can become a new gateway coming into Franklin that feels like a more urban experience. We have this beautiful rural experience coming down Franklin Road, and then we can come down Liberty Pike and have a more urban experience. So I think as you ask that question, what's the difference in height? The real issue is, can we get a bank to come behind us and build this, right? Can we capitalize this thing? Is somebody going to believe in it? And the real issue we are having is we can probably take a floor out and a bank will still do it. But what will happen is we will have less units. And so therefore, what we'll have to do is make bigger units. Because the things that are expensive to build are bathrooms and kitchens. Everybody knows that. So that is expensive to build. So the more units we make, the smaller we make them, the more expensive it is. So if we have less density, then we have to make big units. Big units are for very wealthy people. And they are here in Franklin. We won't have a problem renting. We will not have a problem. There's an 8-month waiting list at Harpeth Square. They are for big, expensive people. Average income over there is $210,000 a year. That's really wealthy. That's not our children, even if they have good jobs. So that's what we're fighting for. Can we just kind of make this easy for everybody and go, hey, we'll just follow the rules. That's what we want to do. We're tempted to do that because we don't want to keep coming before you guys, but we just want you to know what's at stake and what we're trying. That's why we're fighting. We're not fighting for it, but just saying, will you guys consider this? That's why. Does that make sense?
And I only asked that because of our position in using the guidelines as a basis for our decisions. So it always intrigues me to see the difference in the approach on it, and being a designer, I design to the user. I design, for that purpose. So anyway, that was just one of my questions. I do see you've got the height lower than Jamison, but it's still the number of floors. So I still have to digest that.
I've got a few comments, but
It's
just,
30 inches
and I'm not
tall.
supposed to ask this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What kind of price point are you looking at for these apartments?
I mean, what,
With-
do you
with-
mean it will be rented? It will be rented, there's an average rent per square foot that is just in the area. So, the bigger the apartment, the more expensive it is. If you
Right.
make a smaller apartment.
Which
it
is what
would-
you're saying.
That's exactly right. So it becomes affordable to people because it's designed small.
We would like to make sure that we're focusing on the elements
Well, I
that
think
this,
that-
this
but
commission
I think
is
this
charged
makes- I
with.
think this is important as we talk about this higher and number of apartments. I think that's,
But we're really not talking about numbers of apartments with
Right.
this body.
We're
It's really
supposed-
about the form,
I
the context,
get it.
and how it
Okay.
relates. So
I have to throw it out there. All right, when I look at both the plan set and the vision document, and I look at, I'm looking at page 3 in the vision document, and I think it's page 19 or 20 in the other one. And I look at that, the mass, and I'm gonna call it from the drone shot, looking at, that's a lot. And it's a bit overwhelming. So I've got to,
And
Which part of it is overwhelming?
I
Is
mean,
it the taller
the whole thing,
does this feel overwhelming as well?
that helped.
Because that's like Amanda Rose says, aerials are always they're just
I
difficult.
understand that,
Yeah.
but that's, first impression is what
Yeah.
I get with this before I see the model.
Yeah.
So I think I go along with what others have said about stories instead of height. I think that has something to do with it. I think let's see. I think, as I said before, I think I'm concerned about, and I know you have a 20-foot drop to Old Liberty Pike, but I'm concerned about those neighbors and their perception, what they're going to be looking out from their back, or they're looking out from their front door of what they're going to see. I can look out, when I drive down Old Liberty Pike now, I can look over and I can see the smokestack at the factory. I don't, and this would certainly fill up with that, but as you're looking up that hill, regardless of the height, you're going to be seeing a large mass of building. So that's a concern.
Well, nothing will be above the trees, right? The old growth trees. That's why we
I know, but
really
I
try
gotta
to keep them.
trees can be removed, but I
Yeah.
got to take that out of the evaluation.
Mr. Roberts, you make great points, and I compliment you on that. Are you an architect?
Oh, heavens, no. They will tell you that on this. I mean, our architect's not here, so I.
But you have a great pair of eyes. I think your comments are, our buildings are no, except for the townhomes. The townhomes are 25 feet from the curb. None of our other buildings are closer than 30 feet from the curb. Now, that also accommodates the extra wide sidewalk because we need to include bicyclists as well as pedestrians. So the setback's quite substantial, 30 feet from the curb. We also, I'm listening carefully to what you're saying. We took 2 levels off the building that's closest to the historic district. So that's down. That building is down to 2 levels on the street, and then you set back approximately 12 or 14 feet, and then we have the next level on top. I'm just trying to get some direction here from you and just kind of thinking together.
We're
collaborating. If we took 1 level off of the building that's closer to Jameson, because I heard, don't build above Jameson, is that what we heard?
I think Jameson, from the street view that Amanda showed you, Jameson is really pushed back on Liberty.
No,
It's right
Closer than our buildings.
It's right up on Liberty.
I'm talking about from Franklin Road. When I look down Liberty Pike from Franklin Road, it's really pushed back. I wasn't clear.
Actually, because of the bend in the road, when
Yes.
you actually look down that Liberty Pike, Jameson is what you're going to see. You're not going to see our building because it bends a little bit like a slight boomerang. I hate to give Australians credit, but
no,
it's a
I
slight
get you.
boomerang there. Anyway, but would it be a consideration that perhaps if we took a level off of the taller building, and because the other buildings are 2 whole levels lower. And then if we actually then had 3+1, if we had 3+1 for both sets of buildings, that would give you 3 levels along the street. And, you know, if you, I mean, something like that. I mean, you would then be quite a bit lower than Jameson. And in your, and with the perspective we have of these protruding elements, the courtyards, and, you know, I have to be frank with you, the upper levels, these upper levels are large units with outdoor balconies and all, so that, we're putting all of the parking below grade.
Right.
We're
I can
going down
understand that.
23 feet into rock. So that upper level pays for that rock construction. I mean, I just have to be frank and tell you that. I mean, this is a balancing act too. But it would something like that, if we came back with drawings that, you know, that illustrated something like that for your consideration, would that be something you'd be willing to look at?
I think Kelly's been trying to make a point over there.
It wasn't related to this particular comment line. When it's appropriate, we have Tyler Lamarinel's comments that we'll read for you all for input.
What, just go ahead and read them.
I've taken over for Amanda since it's finally. Mr. Lamarinel says that I continue to think this is a good design. I would like to see a bit of adjustment in the scale as a gradient of the site. They have begun to do this with the townhouses, which I think are perfect scale as they sit. I believe a taller 2-story to afford the owners a basement garage is necessary and does not overwhelm the Alpheus Truitt house. Not to mention it is quite a ways from the townhouses. The middle building, the first large building, needs to gradually step up from those townhouses. They have begun to do this with some step backs, but I would like to see those step backs exaggerated at the west side of the building to more gently transition from the townhouses. I think this is an exercise in both elevation, how it looks from the outside, as well as plan. They too have begun to make some accommodations to the scale by notching out courtyards, etc. There was some talk about pushing the townhouses back to align more closely with the Truitt house, but looking at the plan, that simply isn't possible. The Truitt house is really set back quite a distance from Liberty Pike, not some typical city lot setback. In my eyes, it is unreasonable to ask the owners to use that as some type of basis for their Liberty Pike setback. The other question I ask myself for the townhouse location is this: what is the alternative? Green space? That would make the larger middle building the portion that people are confronted with first. A single-family house? I think the corner warrants something more substantial. It needs to hold its weight between 3 juggernauts: the factory, the Alpheus Truitt house, and the middle 8 center building. Tough task, needs to be substantial, but not overpowering. The townhouse seems to fit that bill to me as multifamily, specifically townhouses, seems to check all those boxes.
Good. I think we could share those with our resident architect over here.
Did you say resident?
Yay,
Yeah.
you're moving here.
Yeah, you're moving here, aren't you?
We need to talk.
Those are good comments, and I think that what you've got for the single family or the townhouses and the single family dwellings is fine. I really don't have any problem. I think it's just that stuff in the middle that we, and I don't know that we've solved anything for you, but does anybody else have anything? Kathy?
To answer or respond to your question, your proposal of reducing the floors, I would like to see that, to bring it
Yeah, I
closer.
think so.
To bring it closer to our guidelines. That makes it more palatable for us to look at the differences between what you're proposing and what our guidelines are protecting, as far as, you know, the historical community. This is a unique site, and I think it's a beautiful, what you're proposing is absolutely beautiful, and we're tweaking. And I think some of these initial tweakings, along with Tyler's comments, which are very specific, he's our architect head, I think can guide you in another tweaking that brings you a few steps closer to the guidelines. Yet still meets your needs for your proposal. Bring that to us and let us digest again.
I think Amanda was being very polite in her response about density. We kind of need this mass to make everything pencil. So if we can kind of shuffle it around, make it lower at one end, and I know we've listened to the historic concerns, and yet our first building on the west is over 400 feet from Franklin Road. 400 feet.
The first multi-story building.
Yes,
Yeah.
400 feet.
Behind
So,
the
and
tower.
we're showing right now a building there that's just 36 feet tall. And so if we had some, and we'll come back to you with that. I think we've had excellent direction here today.
That first building, that height, that one he built?
Building number one, the townhome?
No, that first mass building, the larger
that-
building.
So
first
the
one
one,
is
the one that I have my cursor on, which is a 2-story with the third recess. Is everyone comfortable with that scale? Okay.
Except I would note that Commissioner Marinell had
Yes.
comments about that.
I
and
think that was a
increasing
pretty
the
good
scale.
comment.
Assess a little bit.
Yeah, right,
Just
right.
stick
I'm gonna,
with it.
Right.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
give you this.
We're listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to send that to them too, certainly, because I did get that from Tyler. But I did want to share that staff's concerns are related to scale congruency and setbacks. So we agree that, you know, setting back this building would probably be appropriate for a transitional setback, as you get a much wider setback here at Franklin Road and then continue on the more residential setback component. Staff feels very comfortable with the scale that's in this first building, absolutely. And the applicant's done a really great job in heeding comments from not just myself, but the current planning staff to address the massing. It's wonderful. You guys have done a really great job. It's just the scale of this building. We understand the height is comparable to that of Jameson Station, but the scale relationship remains. You start getting differences in fenestration, detailing once you have, you cram a scale essentially that's higher than what's adjacent to it.
And if I could make one additional comment, I keep hearing references to the historic district in Franklin Road, but this whole property, not the whole property, but this portion of the property running along Liberty Pike is all under the historic overlay. So it's not,
No,
I keep hearing you, sir, reference the relationship to Franklin Road. The whole length of that property in Liberty Pike is within the historic overlay. So I think, just keep that in mind.
Right, but we've been working closely with staff on the setbacks, in particular from Franklin Road.
And that is definitely part of it.
And I think that this starts to tell you a little bit about, I mean, this street drops off 20 feet as we go down the hill. You will note the brick and stone materials, I think, from one of your earlier discussions today. Did you notice that? I think, that's why I turned to this page. But I think, you know, if we were able to work in, take the level over here and work it in here architecturally, and maybe even have a more substantial setback as was the comments, it gets a little difficult on that top level because that top level starts to disappear, and that's kind of valuable. But I think those are the challenges, and I think, thank you for being flexible. Thank you for being collaborative, because this is exactly the discussion we need.
Well, and I would say, just the comment with this windfall density right here. I think there's lots of reasons for there to be, I would like to see the buildings come down, but I do think it's exciting with the factory and walkability and Harlansdale, and it's like,
Absolutely.
why didn't we think of that? So,
Well, I think these two projects working together is going to give you something incredibly special. When I first saw the renderings they made of the factory, we went over, and I looked at the rendering. I looked at that and I said, oh my goodness. And we're doing this across the street? Oh my goodness, this is really nice. This is very nice. So this district, along with your downtown, and now with that beautiful street that you put in, this all works together.
Okay.
Thank you for.
Anything
thank
else?
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
We
guys.
appreciate it. Save that model.
All right.
I think, like, some of the things when you talk about 4 stories seems scary, but when you know what I mean? Like, it feels, I think one of the things we've been saying, we're handing out this paper thing, is one of the things Toby and I have been driven by is society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they'll never sit on. Under, I love that because I feel like we're developing something that we probably won't even, it'll mature when we're long gone.
What do you mean,
know?
what do you mean, old man? What do you mean, old man?
I'm right there with you.
What is this? You know, I'm gonna live till I'm 125, so that gives me another 60 years of tree growing.
Yeah, well, we have some,
You can grow a big
He's
tree in
living.
60 years.
he's gonna live in the middle age.
All right, I think we're adjourned.
Oh, oh my
Amanda?
gosh.
I'm sorry, we